Tonight's coverage of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series is brought to you by Malwa Transport and Assure Action Transport Expert. For oversized cargo and trucking logistics specialists of Quebec, visit www.malwa-transport.ca. And for an expert and professional trucking insurance firm specializing in property and casualty insurance solutions for freight across Quebec, Canada and the United States, visit www.transportexpert.com. Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to TRTM for tonight's coverage of Round 5 of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival. As always, I am Regan Clark, and you join us here for the first of our double sprint rounds as we make the trip across the Atlantic after 4 rounds in North America over to Great Britain at the home of the Jaguar XK right here at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Founded in 1950 and consistent of 2.4 miles and 9 turns of FIA Grade 2 in the modern day, remaining strikingly faithful to its 1976 configuration with a few minor alterations over the years, the Brands Hatch circuit is a cult classic amongst British race fans. Among its ranks on the calendar include the British Touring Car Championship, British GT Championship, British Superbike Championships, GT World Challenge Europe, NASCAR Euro Series and British Formula 4. Historically, Brands Hatch swapped hands with Silverstone over the years for the place of the British Grand Prix between the years of 1964 and 1986. Today, however, it lays claim to the first of our double sprints and round 5 of the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series by Competizione Performance League, powered by Malwa Transport and Assure Action Transport Expert. Looking at where it places us on the calendar, you can see that we're a little over the halfway mark in the calendar now, heading into round 5 with only 9 rounds in this season. 4 rounds set to follow, with this being the first among them here in Great Britain before we make the move into mainland Europe for the season finale at the first of its kind, a triple stint round coming up for round 9 over in Zolder on December 16th before we close out operations in 2025. These next 4 weeks, though, set to be incredibly exciting here as we take a look at MSV's finest lineup: Brands Hatch, Donington, Snetterton and Alton, to form the next 4 weeks of racing here on the Competizione Performance League in the GT3 Revival Series for Jaguar. Looking at where things are then with the schedule for today's race, and we do have some rather interesting new regulations to go over for today's event. Looking into it then, for the regs for today, we find ourselves currently in the middle of the free practice session, 20 minutes of free practice before we get on to the first of our qualifying sessions, and then a 30-minute race to follow, with the second qualifying and second race following directly after. No mandatory pit stop for either of the 2 30-minute races, and this is a first for this season. Podium finishers from race 1 get only 1 flying lap in the qualifying for race 2, so there is a hot stint coming up as a bit of a success ballast for the podium sitters out of that first race. We're excited to see how that develops. We are hoping that it encourages much closer racing in race 2. It does give them a little bit of a greater challenge to work against 4 new drivers for this round, 2 of which returning to the series. We have 2 new by default, George Todd and Martin de la Chevrotier in the number 12 and the number 50. We also have Christophe Dupois returning from the GT4s, and same story for David Tanguay. The 39 and the 30 return under the veil of Jaguars. And to give a quick reminder, the drop point system is still in active service. That would be the single worst result for any one driver no longer contributes to the championship. More information has been already relayed over the course of the last couple of rounds back in our time in North America. But heading into Great Britain, as we're still in the midst of free practice, we watch on board at the moment with Richard Cecil on his way round Sheen Curve. And as we do so, let's recount the championship standings after 4 rounds of racing here in the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. And Christian Lebay continues to lead by 18 points now to Byron Forrest in second. Riding on the highs of his success in Laguna Seca, Giovanni Badiali, on his first win this season, surfs his way up to third in the championship, 8 points clear of Kevin Quain, now down to fourth. Carl Martel in fifth with 78 points ahead of Clinton Bourne in 6th place, who had a resounding podium last week. Joint 7th place for Richard Cecil on your screens at the moment. He's joint 7th with Timo de Tosto at 71 points apiece. We have Dan Junior Poulin in 9th place with 64 points. Alex Albert maintains 10th after last round, and he stays there with 62 points to his name, coming in to the first of our British rounds. Pulling into one side, then down through the Graham Hill Bend, the number 5 of Richard Cecil. As we take a look here, here's David Tanguay making his way back out on track. Last time we saw him, he was behind the wheel of an Aston Martin back in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. We see up the road from him there, Carl Martel and Dan Poulin making their way down Paddock Hill Bend. We'll get a full tour of the track in a moment's time. But looking into those last couple of rounds, namely for that big crowd splitter that we rode on the successes of last week in Laguna Seca over in Monterey County, California, gave us a very bizarre new result. As seeing here, after 3 races in a row of utter dominance by Christian Lebay, Giovanni Badiali broke the drought and took his first win this season back in Laguna Seca. Lebay finishing second, off by about 3.2 seconds in the overall gap, with Clinton Bourne a resounding third place for the Australian in the number 6. Byron Forrest in 4th, and Carl Martel round out that top 5 last round. But really, that big splitter was Badiali's first win of the season. It really did break the sort of cracks in the facade open on what has been dominant so far this season by the 119. Lebay still yet to have been properly shaken off of the top step of the podium, 18 points clear, of course, of Byron Forrest down in 2nd place. It is still easy and breezy heading into Brands Hatch with double points opportunities up on the charts here. 2 races means double the available points. We see actually further up the road from where we were watching with David Tanguay, we can actually see a little spot of battling right early on in free practice before we get into qualifying today. We'll discuss that in about 13 minutes time, the qualifying predictions for round 5 of the championship. See though, Dan Junior Poulon narrowly avoiding what appeared to be Vincent Simard down there on the paddock hill. He is now currently sparring with the 99 of Carl Martel, who seemingly, and I might be mistaking myself here, but looks to be sporting yet another distinctive shade of green on his 99 Jaguar. See if we can get a look around the field here. We see Casey Miles in the pit lane. There's Vincent Simard and Stephen Black also in the pit lane at this time. We can see one of the new drivers on the field here. Now, this is Martin de la Chevrotier in the number 50 car, making his way currently down through Westfield, down towards the Dingledale and Sheen curve. As a matter of fact, let's see if we can stay on board with the newcomer here in the number 50. One of 2 new drivers to have signed up for round 5 of the championship. The other being a resident talent from over on the NLRL Sunday League, where we best know him for. That will be the number 12 of George Todd, with any hopes to see him today still riding on the line. We'll stay on board though with de la Chevrotier as he makes his way out through Clark Curve at turn 9, and to begin the first of his flying, or next I should say, of his flying laps here in Brands Hatch. You see here telemetry up on the top left-hand side as we make our way down through Paddock Hill Bend, possibly the most iconic section of the track, and he runs off into the gravel, calling it quits on his flying lap time. So not the first time we've ever run into issues like this. Let's see if we can catch on board with another driver about to start a flying lap. It's Timo de Tosto. And with any luck here, the 58 down towards the line on a massive improvement over his last. Goes from 11th to 6th over the course of that last lap down through the Paddock Hill Bend. Are we set to see a full lap out of de Tosto? Here's hoping, as making our way out of turn 1, the most iconic section of Brands Hatch. Its verticality on that drop downhill through turn 1. Then the run back uphill towards turn 2 here at Druids. Now on the run back downhill through the Graham Hill now to Graham Hill Bend at turn 3. Making our way up the Cooper Straight over towards where it would connect to the Indy circuit via McLaren's corner. We make our way very, very swiftly over to the left-hand side to enter the Grand Prix section via Surtees at turn 4. Making our way then to a real decent straightaway for our drivers today. An opportunity to get that 5-litre Jaguar Ilmore V8 singing on our way down through the Pilgrim's Drop and up Hawthorne Hill through Hawthorns now at turn 5. In through Westfield then after the Derek Minter Straight, in through the Dingledale as we make our way up towards Sheen Curve. Now this is a real treacherous corner we've seen unilaterally across ACC here. Very, very tough to see one's way around that corner. In through Sterling's then at turn 8 on our run down towards turn 9. It's looking otherwise spry for de Tosto. You can see though he is down 0.3 of a second. So it does go measurements to see just how far some of the drivers have been taking the track so far. We are seeing times on the predictions right now in and around the range of 123, mid to low 123, if I remember correctly. Down across the line then goes Timo de Tosto on an unofficial tour of the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. You see here with Julio Bahena making his way down towards turn 9 as we speak. Right now up 1.4 seconds, so a sizable improvement on the way for Bahena in the number 18. Down towards the line he goes. And shifts from 16th place up to 8th, so splits it dead in half there after the last lap he's just done. Very, very well done then for Julio Bahena as he makes his way back down Paddock Hill. You see here a little spot of potentially some more sparring. Now Tanguay was previously an observer to Poulon and Martel's fight. Now he seems to be more of an active participant. These two already getting acclimatized to one another as they make their way up and around Hawthorne Hill. Watching here with Dan Poulin's perspective, the leading of those two cars in the very, very nicely coloured British Racing green and gold Jaguar. Trailing on his back there, you can see the white and black and little splashes of red there that comprise David Tanguay's number 30. One of the newest additions to the field. Just up the road from them there, that black and green indicates only one thing in my mind, and that's Clinton Bourne, currently third fastest in the session. As we've seen now joining from the pit lane is George Todd, so we're going to try and see if we can get a look on board with him. We just see making their way out of the pit lane at this time is Casey Miles in the number 96. He's on his way out of the pit lane right now, just passing up ahead of him. Was the 44 and the 30, which we were previously watching on board with. Let's see if we can get a look, though, as we see actually briefly down through Hawthorns goes Vincent Simard. Out through the Derek Minter straight. Big cut there over Westfields, but it's all still valid for him, and he's nearly half a second up. He's fourth place right now in the timing charts, now half a second up and well clearing it out through the Sheen curve. A little bit of time bleeds away, but it gets later onto the brakes into Sterling's. Could that come back to bite him? Yes, it can, because he drops just south of that half a second improvement. So this could be quite a compelling lap we're seeing here from Simard. 4 attempts, and we've seen how close some of these qualifying sessions go down to. If this is the prelude for great things to come here in Brands Hatch, then we're thoroughly looking forward to it. Just over half a second as he makes his way to the line, but it made no dice on his fourth place position so far. 124.687 by Vincent Simard as he crosses the line there on what looked to be a very, very staggering lap indeed. The Anthony Corti on his way down through Paddock Hill Bend. Well, we're trying to see if we can catch on board. You can see there that bright, vivid blue marking the number 12. That is George Todd on his debut drive, so high expectations here. Normally we see him in the white, green and red Ferrari 296 over on the NLRL Sunday League. I'm sure this is quite a change in uniform for George Todd to move over to Jaguars, but we've seen that it's been a surprisingly dense talent pool here in this series. You would have expected with the single mate cup series, we've seen it be make or break for a lot of drivers. We've seen a lot of these guys here in Competizione Performance League really take it under their wing to tackle such an unorthodox machine. We've seen some drivers have really flourished under the conditions, such as the case has been for Richard Cecil. We saw that his move away from Alpine back in GT4s was the first of many great things to come for the number 5, and he moved to Aston Martin, and now we've kind of seen it continue to blossom. He's a frequent flyer in that top 10 right now, finds himself joint 7th in the championship, heading into the British chapter, and with plenty more point scoring opportunities on the way, we could see a huge shift in the power balance over the course of the next 4 weeks of racing. Looking at where the timing charts are concerned here as we head towards the trailing 6 minutes of qualifying, we see that Christian Lebay leads by a landslide, 931 thousandths of a second between himself and last week's race winner Giovanni Badiali in the number 998. These two set to duke it out one more time here in Brands Hatch before we enter the British chapter proper. Clinton Bourne third place at the moment, 400ths up the road from Vincent Simard after his most recent efforts that we saw on his way out through turn 9 at Clark Curve, more poignantly out through these last two corners here through the Sheen curve and down through Sterling's, where he properly licked the stamp and sent it on that number 120. Kevin Quain currently 5th fastest with Julio Bahena in 6th, so a great resolve and great turnaround for Bahena. We've seen a real mixed bag for pace for that number 18. We have seen him to be up towards that middle to top, say 30% of drivers on the greater majority of these races, but this is usually a bit more foreign territory for the number 18, finding himself 6th place at the moment, up the road by 35 thousandths of a second to Richard Cecil in 7th place. Byron Forrest slowly but surely acclimatising to the British chapter here. Brands Hatch is a real love it or hate it circuit for a lot of people internationally. For British fans, it is a cult classic venue. It's up there as part of that holy trinity. Up there with what I would say, in my personal opinion, would be the holy trinity is Donington, Brands Hatch and Silverstone. Sadly, without Silverstone on the calendar, we can only win so many times here on the TRTN channel, but oh well. We'll be heading into this one with a very firm smile into Brands Hatch for 2 races back-to-back. Down towards the line then comes Byron Forrest, and the number 824 from 8th place. Does he improve? Yes, up to 6th place, up and ahead from Julio Bahena and Richard Cecil. They're now down to 7th and 8th. Nearest to the line, the number 50. That is the new driver on the block, Martin de la Chevrotier. Across the line there, 18th fastest. Right now, as it stands, 1.4 seconds up the road from Casey Miles in 19th. He's on his way out through turn 9, down towards the start-finish line here. So we'll see what Miles can do as he crosses from 19th. Stays there, but to an improvement now, putting himself within 0.3 of a second. Runs off into the gravel. And to be fair to Bahena, amidst the chaos that was kicked out from under him in Laguna Seca, what was a very exciting trailing chapter for the American leg. Despite penalties at the end of that race, a 20-second time penalty that pushed him down to 10th place, he had great hustle. We know what Bahena is capable of when he really applies himself. I think last week was that prelude to what could be a really solid active. We're already seeing the first of those puzzle pieces fall into play with this already very solid pace right now, putting himself up in that top third of drivers right off the bat. And we've not even hit qualifying. So for a lot of these drivers, you've got to take this with a pinch of salt, that there could be those more experimental setups. They're more prepping for the race than prepping for the qualifying. Of course, we're going to start to see the intensity ramp up quite a bit first and foremost there from Byron Forrest, now putting himself in the equation for that fastest time. The only second driver in this session right now to be within a second of Christian Lebay up in the front. And as we see it right now, he's 50, looking at it here, 57 thousandths of a second between himself and Giovanni Badiali in second place. So this could be a heavily contested front row coming up in qualifying today, not just between Badiali and Lebay, but seemingly with Forrest as well. And it would be rude to not consider as well the argument of Clinton Bourne and Vincent Simard. These two very, very close to the times of Badiali and Forrest, even though they're north of a second to Lebay. It's really for that consideration of the second row. We've seen with Badiali, especially back in GT4, he was capable of many great things when he wasn't starting from the lead of the race. But even with that consideration, looking back into Laguna Seca, it's not that he needed much of the shove, really. We saw that he started on the front row and led rather decisively so. He'd be aiming right now at the best of times. I think he wants pole position. I think everyone heads into a qualifying session with the understanding that they're gunning for pole position, and most drivers are complacent with where they end up. That's usually how things end up with these qualifying sessions, how they've been going over the course of the last 4 rounds. I think a lot of people will settle into that rhythm, a lot of them trying to work around how close can I get to that front row, because the chances now, with these two becoming more and more frequent customers of it, Lebay and Badiali, the greater chances are heading into these next 2 races with a lot less time on the table, you could expect to see much more intense racing coming up. And the flashpoint, I reckon we're not far from it, especially looking back into that calendar just briefly before we get into qualifying. We have 4 of these rounds back to back. That's 8 races in total. And to top all of that off, it becomes 11 races when you consider the triple stint coming up in the round after at the season finale. So there are so many point scoring opportunities and such little time per race to make the most of it. Moreover, we could be seeing some interesting things out of these 3 drivers. Say, for example, if they were to go on to finish on these positions in the forthcoming race here of race 1 of 2 today, they would be only allowed to do 1 flying lap, whether it invalidates or validates is another question entirely. They get 1 opportunity to do it. So that will be a very heavy focal point for us heading into qualifying 2, is who ends up on the podium in race 1, because they're going to find it much, much harder to do that same ounce of qualifying magic twice. It's really that fight against capturing lightning in a bottle with these new regs, and I think it's going to make for quite a compelling second quali coming up. But first of all, we've got the first qualifying coming up in roughly, looking at it here, only a few seconds time, so very, very on time here. Oh, that's the end of free practice. We wait here for a few more drivers to the line. The number 12, not far from it, George Todd, from 10th place across the line and seemingly stays there at the end of free practice, but already a good sign for his first outing. So we've seen with the Jaguar XK G3 by Emil Frey Racing to put himself in the top 10 of what has already been an ultra competitive field over the last 4 weeks of racing here in the Competizione Performance League. Bit my lip there, that really hurts. Down through the Graham Hill bend. 2 more drivers then to the line before the end of free practice, among them Dan Junior Poulin in the number 44 on his way currently down through Hawthorns, up the Derek Minter straight and up towards Westfields. Trailing from him there, the 707 of Stephen Black. Still yet to have put a time on the charts here. He's down in 21st place on what is looking to be record high numbers heading into these next two races at Brands Hatch. We could realistically expect to see a lot more action coming our way in these next two races. With such little time to play with, these drivers are going to have to make every single corner count. With only 9 at play here in what is a relatively simplistic track such as Brands Hatch, they are not 9 graceful corners neither. It is going to be a very exciting race. It doesn't matter really what format we employ. Brands Hatch has always given us here on TRTN a fantastic outing. Let's see how qualifying gets underway then. 10 minutes in Quali 1 already underway. You can see quite a few drivers scrambling for the pit exit, and we'll try and catch on board here with the drivers leaving first among the fray. I believe we saw up the road and out through the pit lane first goes Richard Cecil, the number 5, out through the Paddock Hill bend up towards Druids to become the first driver to make their way out on track here in Quali 1. Looking at those qualifying predictions taken earlier on today, it pitches Christian Lebay at pole position, a 1:23.342. Rather unsurprising to see him back at the top of the timing charts after suffering defeat in Laguna Seca last week. Clinton Bourne looking at second place once more, a 1:24.167 for the Australian. He's looking hopeful once again his second week on the top 3 of those qualifying predictions. Carl Martel third, with Vincent Simard in 4th place. Anthony Cotti predicted in 5th. Dan Junior Poulin in 16th. Alex Albert in 7th. Richard Cecil in 8th place. Martin de la Chevrotier in 9th. And Andrew Velkamp in 10th. You can see the gaps there are getting much, much closer. I think closest gap we're seeing at this time, I want to make sure I'm getting this correct, is again for 6th place. And we've started to notice this pattern over the last couple of races in this season, is that 6th place seemingly is this magic position, is the most closest position to be fought for in terms of those qualifying times. And we're seeing here 4 hundredths of a second, 40 thousandths to be specific, dividing Poulin from Albert. And it seems to be a recurring theme. 6th place is one of the closest fought positions in quali predictions. Let's see how things pan out today. We're on board with the number 5 who's just started their flying lap, bringing the telemetry up for Richard Cecil. Making his way currently down through Druids. Stay on board just so that you can get a scope of that magnificent 5-litre roar. That Jaguar AJ-V8 engine has been kicking around the block since 1996, was even loaned out to their competitors at Aston Martin for use in the 2006 Aston Martin V8 Vantage. Now on the exit of Sterling's. I think it's something that a lot of the onboards in this game don't really do the justice for at Brands Hatch. I think you really do have to see it to believe it. If you ever do get the opportunity to come down to West Kingsdown, Kent, I absolutely encourage you to come to Brands Hatch and see it for yourself, because it really took my breath away when I went to the British Touring Car Championships not too long ago. Go to Brands Hatch and see that look down Paddock Hill Bend. It is really like staring down a cliff edge. Down through Sterling's we go then on our run down towards Clark Curve. Richard Cecil to become the first on the timing charts. Let's see how things stack up for the number 5 as we pull away the telemetry here down towards the line. Richard Cecil to become the first time on the charts here in qualifying 1. Very, very limited time to play against. Already 3 minutes having been burnt away just to get the first time on the charts. So 1:25.745 next to the line comes the 1:19 of Christian Lebay to start a flying lap. The 6:07 is next to the line, and fastest goes Kevin Quain. Then from behind him, George Todd takes the fastest time by 177 thousandths. The 8:24 next to the line, Byron Forrest 4th fastest by 8 tenths. The number 18 nearest to the lines we see here, Julio Bahena, already looking very strong for pace and had a great comeback drive, albeit with penalties at the end of that last round. In Laguna Seca, he puts 5th fastest on the times, and a flurry of times follow in his wake, with the 7:07 of Stephen Black now 8th fastest, with Casey Miles having previously taken the position off of him. Carl David Bourdreau 7th, and we already see the times are just rolling in here like thunder. Albert in 5th, Poulin 6th. Byron Forrest maintains 4th place. Timo de Tosto in 6th. The number 6 across the line, Clinton Bourne, now 2nd place. 1:20, Vincent Simard across the line a moment ago. and it was a bit of a fluke time for him. 1.7 seconds off the beat. He is in 12th place. George Todd now pushed out of line for the fastest time as Giovanni Badiali lays the first of his heavy blows here. 124.927 by Badiali, now fastest by 208 thousandths of a second. The 919 of Anthony Cotti next to the line as he approaches. Sadly doesn't set a time, so we'll be waiting for the number 39 of Christophe Dupois. He crosses the line and onto the timing chart, 17th fastest. The number 5 pulls into the pit lane, so the 119 nearest to the line. Can we catch on board with Lebay before he hits the checkered line? Here comes Christian Lebay and up to first fastest. Pole position right off the bat, 1.2 seconds as we hit the halfway. The 607 across the line, Quain up to 5th. And the 824 next to the line, Byron Forrest up to 2nd, 1.252. So we're talking here 200ths of a second between Forrest and Badiali to be on that second row. The number 18, here comes Julio Bahena. Could he be back up into the top 10s as he crosses the line? Sadly, doesn't appear to be the case this time around. A flurry of times, the 707, then the 962, then the 44, and the 962, Carl David Bourdreau now 7th. From behind him, the 36, Alex Albert across the line. Sadly, couldn't make an improvement over his current times. He maintains 10th place. The number 6 next to the line after the 58 of Timo de Tosto, and Clinton Bourne second fastest, first to break the mold there on that second barrier. The 998 across the line, Giovanni Badiali onto another flying lap. The 616 next across the line, Andrew Velkamp now up to 10th place. The 99 nearest to the line at the moment, Carl Martel down towards the line. Can he get up into the top 10? Yes, he can, up to the top 5 no less, as he puts himself within 3 thousandths of a second of Giovanni Badiali. Bear in mind, that's already in touching range of third place off of Byron Forrest, as that's a factor of only 200ths. 119 next to the line again. Can Lebay break into the halfways of a 123? It's a 123.655 to beat, and across the line doesn't make an overall improvement, maintains pole position. Nonetheless, the 607, third fastest now. Following in his wake was the number 12 of George Todd, now 7th fastest. The 824 of Byron Forrest maintains his stead of third, now up the road from Quain. The 607 pushed down to 4th. Byron Forrest getting closer and closer to being within that sub-second barrier. The number 18, Julio Bahena, next across the line up to the top 10. 9th place, 1.922 seconds from pole position. 44 next across the line. Dan Poulon from 14th stays there on what appeared to be an invalid time, so we try and catch on board here with what looked to be the number 30 across the line, and that, as a matter of fact, was David Tanguay on a showstopper. Goes up the road from Byron Forrest to third place, and within, looking at it here, 25 thousandths of a second. And as I say that, here comes Badiali to second fastest, now breaking the toe off of both of them. They maintain a gap on that second row of 25 thousandths of a second, but Badiali says, thank you very much, I'll have second right off of you. The number 99 across the line just moments ago, that was Carl Martel into the top 5, now comprising 5 cars to be within a second of the fastest time today. The 919 next to the line, Anthony Cotti into the timing chart, 17th fastest. 39 across the line, Christophe Dupois maintains 18th. Lebay to the line, can it be an improvement? Yes, it is, by 0.2 of a second over Badiali, now 623 thousandths. That brings the gap now down only 4 cars to be within a second of that fastest time. The 824 hurrying down to the line. Here comes Byron Forrest. Could it be a charge back to the top 5? Not on this lap. Needs to make 52 thousandths on Carl Martel to put himself in that top 5. We've just seen across the line a moment ago, Richard Cecil breaks into the top 10, now pushes Carl David Bourdreau to the back of the top 10, pushes Bahena out of the top 10 in its entirety. The number 44 nearest to the line, here comes Dan Poulon on his way out of turn 9. This has been an incredibly hectic qualifying session. We've got 2 of these back-to-back. A real focal point of that second quali is going to be our 3 potential one-shot qualifiers coming up out of race 1. Across the line a moment ago, Alex Albert to 12th fastest. The 36 now up the road from De Tosto and Simard, and Veldkamp towards the back of that top 15. The number 50 nearest to the line, it's Martin de la Chevrotier, one of the new drivers on the block, alongside the number 12 of George Todd, and of course the returning pair of Tanguay and Dupois. 18th fastest for de la Chevrotier. Number 919 next to the line, here comes Anthony Cotti from 17th place. Not far off a shout of 16th. Across the line he goes, sadly to no improvement at this time. The 39 nearest to the line, that's Christophe Dupois by looks of things. And across the line he goes, maintains 19th place currently. Not able to make a mark up there on Martin Della Chevrotier's time in 18th place. The 824 barrels down to the line now. Byron Forrest at his second attempt here to get back into the top 5. Across the line he goes and makes it into the top 5, and by then some. Nearly three attempts, actually, I should say, of a second between himself and Carl Martel. Right now resides from the pit lane, calls it quits on his qualifying endeavours. A valiant effort right at the very end of quali 1 here for Byron Forrest. Very, very well done indeed. The number 44 barreling down through turn 9. Dan Poulon from 16th place narrowly avoids gravel over his left-hand side as he makes his way down towards the start-finish line. With the timing on the charts at the moment, he's got one more opportunity as he breaks into the top 15. 44 into 15th place. 2.288 seconds. Needs 66 thousandths on Vincent Simard to put himself up a peg here. The 998 across the line. Here comes Badiali as he crosses the line. One more time available for him today. Number 96 across the line just a moment ago. That was Casey Miles, 20th fastest at the moment, 4.034 from pole position. Number 30 and the number 50 followed in his wake. David Tanguay up to 4th, and the number 50 of Martin Della Chevrottier stays 18th at this time. Next to the line comes the 39, and following in his wake is the 119. Christophe Dupois heading down towards the line. Right behind him is Christian Lebay. Dupois to the line from 19th, stays there. Lebay to the line, stays there. No improvement over his fastest. So it still lays bare here for Badiali to take, but he's really going to need to dig deep on this next lap. Or on the lap that he's presently finding himself on, I should say. Richard Cecil to the line then. From 9th, stays 9th. Number 12 of George Tott, a great opening qualifier for the Mexican talent. We've seen him in Ferrari, now we see him in Jaguar. 8th place as he makes his way to the line after the end of qualifying 1. The number 18, here comes Julio Bahena. Can he make a claim to the top 10? Not this time around. The 44 follows in his wake, and Dan Poulon made his way to the top 15. Can he make anywhere above that? And across the line he goes, sadly, not this time around. And as we saw as well, having retired to the pit lane, Giovanni Badiali, contempt, was second at this time, did more than enough to put himself in fighting range of Lebay. We saw him win from outside of pole position last week. Can we see him do the same? Only time will tell, and we've got 2 opportunities to see that coming up today. As we exit qualifying 1, what a grid then. Lebay on pole position, Badiali second, Bourne third, Tanguay 4th. On return to the series, what a re-entry for the number 30 of David Tanguay. Byron Forrest rounds out that top 5. We'll get a look at the full grid in just a moment's time. To remind you of the regulations for today's event, as I should say, we had to scroll through a few of our sliders there. A little bit embarrassing for us, but as you can see, we're now at the end of qualifying 1. We now make our way forthcoming into race 1 today. 30 minutes against the clock coming up here in Brands Hatch before we get to do it all over again. Another 10-minute qualifying session, but bear in mind, this time around, the podium finishers out of today's forthcoming race will only get 1 attempt at a flying lap in the qualifying coming up for race 2. So this is set to be very, very exciting indeed. Now we can see the grid begin to form up about 3 minutes before we get on to the formation lap. Christian Lebay makes pole position here for race 1 of 2 today at round 5 of the championship here in Brands Hatch. And he's up and ahead of Giovanni Badiali. These two sharing a front row last round. Let's see what they can do with 2 times the amount of available races coming into today's event. Calibro84 asks, has anyone else got glitchy audio? That would be fantastic to know. If we're having any issues with the audio, please do let us know. Sometimes it can be a client-side issue. In third place at the moment is Clinton Bourne, and alongside him, David Tanguay on return to Competizione Performance League's championship structure. Last time we saw him was back in GT4. Byron Forrest rounds out the top 5 ahead of Carl Martel to round out that third row. 6th place for the number 99, and up the road from Kevin Quain and George Todd on his first drive here in the Competizione Performance League. 8th place for the number 12. He's up the road from Richard Cecil and Carl David Bourdreau to round out the top 10. Julio Bahena in 11th, Alex Albert in 12th, Timo Tosto in 13th with Vincent Simard in 14th place, Dan Poulon in 15th with Andrew Velkamp in 16th, Anthony Cotti in 17th and Martin Della Chevrottier in 18th with Christophe Dupois in 19th. Casey Miles rounds out the top 20 with Stephen Black in 21st. We would be curious to know whether or not there's been any issues with the audio. We're getting quite a few claims in there. That's a claim, I should say, that we had glitchy audio. Tayshawn1 in chat saying he can't hear anything. Is that in the sense that you literally cannot hear our voice, or is that you can't hear anything wrong? I'm assuming if we do get a response, then it's obviously the latter. Audio seems fine. Oh, thank Christ. And, oh, look who that is in chat there. Cookie1420, I recognise you. Hello. You're up late. Oh, wonderful stuff. Just under a minute then before the start of the first of two races today. And it is looking to be very, very exciting indeed. Looking at how things panned out back in Laguna Seca, of course, with these two comprising that front row, it ended up being a swing run for Giovanni Badiali to take his first race win this season. Can he do that 2 times on the trot? Really, only time will tell. We've seen his competency behind the wheel, where qualifying may not be in his favour. Could the race be a different story entirely? As we see the grid start to form up here for the run down through Paddock Hill. Stay on board with the man on pole position, Christian Lebay, with the fastest time in qualifying today, leading a grid of 21 cars down through turn 1. So down through turn 1 he goes, following very closely on his trail there. Giovanni Badiali and Clinton Bourne are podium sitters from last round, so reunited here across the ocean and in the United Kingdom. The first of 4 rounds here in the UK before we head over to Belgium for the season finale over in December. Down through Graham Hill Bend. Now we can expect to see quite a lot of action heading down through Paddock Hill and Druids as per tradition here at Brands Hatch. Jaguars seemingly providing no difference to that status quo. We'll see exactly how things pan out though when we go racing in a moment's time. Out through Surtees then. And this is really going to be make or break in this section here. If you can survive the onslaught down in Sector 1, this is your real opportunity to start making proper moves on track. On the run down through the Pilgrims, dropping up to Hawthorne Hill. It's a major slipstreaming spot. It's the largest straightaway we have here at Brands Hatch before we begin the run through the Grand Prix section proper. Really, you'll want to have the majority of your moves concrete before you hit this section, because it really, really does narrow up and it can get very treacherous in the heat of battle, especially with a grid of 21 drivers surrounding you. See, weaving on his way down the Derek Minter straight, Christian Lebay already trying to build some heat in those Pirellis, trying to give himself as much of a fighting chance here up against Giovanni Badiali. We saw how things panned out the last time, and he's not looking to make the same mistake twice, especially as it can continue to chip away at his championship standings. He still finds himself leading by 18 points, but after that victory in Laguna Seca, Badiali's now up to 3rd and is closing ground. So if this continues, we could be seeing a championship fight on our hands between Lebay, already defending his last championship here in the Competizione Performance League after dominating in GT4 behind the wheel of his 119 Chevrolet Camaro. So without further ado, we begin the formation process proper on our way out of Stirlings and down towards the Clark Curve. One driver starting from the pit lane, so that's Stephen Black in the 707. We'll start from the pit lane here for race 1 of 2 at round 5 of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series, powered by Malwa Transport and Assure Action Transport Expert. As we go rolling here, 20 cars on track, 1 from the pit lane for 21 cars total, 10 either side of it, on our way down towards the line here for first of 2 races, 30 minutes against the clock here in Brands Hatch. Without further ado, taking us from the lead here, Lebay and Badiali down towards the line, and we are green and racing, I should say, here in Brands Hatch for the first of 2 times today. Down through turn 1 already, we see on the attack goes the 998, swings in and collides with the 119. It's already disasters, collecting the 99 and the 12 and the 962. It is absolute bedlam. Someone surely has to call the race there. That may just be one of the most disastrous starts I think I may have ever seen here in Brands Hatch. Absolute calamity from the word go. You can see cars up on all 4 wheels, flung skyward in quite a few cases. That is absolutely diabolical. We see here Badiali, one of those eventually caught up in the fray, was the one who nicked across the back end of the 119 of Christian Lebay. Has created what I would definitely go on to regard as potentially the biggest crash I've ever seen in the Competizione Performance League, but what it does give us is the landscape of at the moment that's somehow surfing the wave here, as now collected by David Tanguay was Clinton Bourne. So what it does promote is Byron Forrest into the race lead as we exit the Sheen curve. What on earth has happened here? As we made our way into Great Britain, we have hit proper bedlam. Now leading the charge is Byron Forrest, Anthony Coty in second, David Tanguay third, Vincent Simard charging for fourth after what I can only describe as an absolute disaster start here at Brands Hatch. It has become an absolute dream for Byron Forrest. Somehow, every driver to have stood in his way up until this point has now, by some cruel stroke of fate, been vanquished from sight. The 824 leads now by 2 seconds from the nearest car. How on earth does one recover from a start such as this? Into the pit lane is a swarm of drivers, among them Richard Cecil, Carl David Bourdreau, Christian Lebay, Dan Junior Poulon, and potentially to be as well, Giovanni Battiali also joins them from the pit lane. That was really quite something there, folks. Looking here with Casey Miles, another driver to have really surfed the traffic. He started down in 20th place. He's now up 13 spots in just one lap after the absolute chaos that erupted here in Brands Hatch but a moment ago. Looking on the Insta replays, this is exactly what we happened right as the race started. Collision between the 998 and the 119, and that just picked up into a whole heap of metal on the exit of the Paddock Hill Bend. The run up towards Druids, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that. I think they refer to that one in stock car racing as the big one. And we've been waiting 5 rounds to see anything of that caliber. As you see here now, a fight between Andrew Veldkamp and Casey Miles heading their way down towards Clark Curve. We stay on board here with Miles in his efforts to try and guard from the 696, the 616. The 696 is a Euro Titans car, for clarification. The 616 is Andrew Veldkamp right now, is right behind him in that continued fight for 7th place. Looking at how things have dramatically shifted in what has been one of the most bizarre race starts I think I may have ever seen in my years as a commentator, we see now a broadly new landscape form in front of us. Byron Forrest leads here in Brands Hatch. Anthony Coty in second. A very close fight set to kick off in a moment's time here between David Tanguay and Vincent Simard. We can see both of them catching up to Anthony Coty. This is in the fight for second place right now. We're on board with that of David Tanguay, making his way currently down the Pilgrim's Drop on his way to Hawthorns. He's up on the inside and up to second place, but loses his spot out almost immediately to Coty in a fantastic defense there. Switcheroo from the 919. That pushes him back into the iron sights of the 120 of Vincent Simard down in 4th place. So we stay on board here with David Tanguay. So looking further down the line, Tanguay currently fighting for second, making his way down through Sterling. Simard 4th. George Todd on his debut here in the Competizione Performance League has seemingly found himself less of a victim than the rest of the grid. He finds himself in the top 5. Also one of the drivers to have benefited from today's disastrous opening start. Alex Albert in 6th place. Casey Miles up to 7th from 20th, with Andrew Veldkamp still in pursuit from 8th place. Kevin Quain in 9th, and Carl Martel in the top 10. Timo de Tosto in 11th, with Stephen Black up to 12th place after starting towards the back of the field today. Christophe Dupois in 13th place. Clinton Bourne in 14th. Julio Bahena in 15th. Martin de la Chevrotier in 16th, Carl David Bourdreau in 17th, Lebay in 18th, Poulin 19th, Battiali 20th, and Cecil in 21st. It's contact between Coty and Tanguay, so even more drama as we make our way through. Soaring his way up to second place goes the 120 of Vincent Simard. So right off the bat here, we find ourselves with a new charge up to second place, that out of Vincent Simard. Boys' time, waited patiently for that one slip down through turn 3, and second was his to claim from there on out. Simard up to second place in the number 120. All the meanwhile, 7.4 seconds the gap now that exists between Simard and Byron Forrest, who is leading right now after a calamity start here in Brands Hatch by a landslide. We see here sliding his way out of the Sheen curve. More trouble befalling the number 30, David Tangway, into the wall on the right-hand side. The drivers seemingly having met their match here in a cult classic venue. Brands Hatch getting the most of these Jaguars today as pulling it into one side. Could this be curtain call for David Tangway as he moves out of the way of drivers moving on by? He drops now down to 8th place. Casey Miles up to 7th up the road from him. Into the pit lane comes Kevin Quain at the moment. The 607 actually still in the pit lane. One of 3 drivers to still be in there. The 998 of Giovanni Badiali just up the road from him. And Dan Junior Poulon in the 44, a battered 44 in the pit lane at this time. Joining them very shortly will be David Tangway. But no, he makes his way back out on track. But surely he's got to start to face reality as it is here. That car, seemingly too damaged to serve, nearly took him out a second time on his way down Paddock Hill Bend. He is wrestling with, well, quite literally a Jaguar here, a predatory animal that is waiting for its opportunity to chew his throat out. That Jaguar XK has been far from decent to him over the course of this race. He's been far from decent to many. Looking for the nearest fights on track. Tangway v Miles may be one in discussion, but I'm sure we could expect to see some coming very shortly, I should say, for Corti v Todd. George Todd now up to 4th place. That is real resolve we're seeing here. Maybe not to the same extent as we're seeing out of Byron Forrest, who has took the baton, passed to him by a series of calamities out in front, and he has not let that one slip between his fingers. He leads now by 8.1 seconds to Vincent Simard in 2nd place. Bear in mind, this is the first time that a success ballast is coming in with that one-shot qualifying structure to be administered to our podium sitters out of this race right now. So this might actually be proving to work against him by the time we hit race 2. In the meantime, though, David Tangway up the road from Casey Miles, now up to 7th in the number 30, starting to get to grips with that Jaguar. Bear in mind, he, like 3 other drivers in this race, including Christophe Dupois, George Todd and Martin Della Chevrotier, are all getting to grips with the Jaguar for the first time here. It is a real baptism of fire here in Brands Hatch to start things off in the British chapter. We see now newest fastest lap comes out of that of Christian Lebay, the 119, down in 15th now, started from pole after that disastrous start. Now at the back of the top 15, saving grace is that he's got the fastest lap for now. We see growing fights on the charts here. We saw previously Tangway v Miles. Now we see from behind them Martel v De Tosto at the back of the top 10. I also want to draw very close attention to this here. Vincent Simard carving his way up ahead of George Todd, now looking at his chances once again against that of Anthony Corti. Let's see if we can catch on board with the two here. Simard in pursuit of Corti for 2nd place once again. He is not laying up on his chances to be up on that front row. Bear in mind, this is a 3-way fight. You can see a little bit of damage on the nose there for George Todd. Whether or not that has been there since the race start, we did see him as one of the cars collected up in the mass here. A sea of blue cars, 3 different shades to be precise, on their way out through turn 9. Now, just to give some context for those of you just tuning in, this was the race start. Once again, we can see the amount of drivers caught up in there. I count Lebay, Badiali, I count Martel, I see George Todd in there, I see Christophe Dupois, I see the 607, I see the number 5, I see the number 120. I mean, really, that comprises well over half the grid on their run down through Paddock Hill for the first time. I did say watch out for action, but I don't think I was watching out for a massacre, because that is precisely what we saw there. Out through Surtees we go then. Little stab of oversteer for Vincent Simard. Bear in mind, the only car of these 3 not to be dealing with any readily apparent damage is that of the leading of this 3-car fight, the 919 of Anthony Corti. Seemingly got the easiest of tasks here, but with these 2 breathing down his neck, it cannot be a particularly comfortable drive for the 919, especially with the tenacity already on display by Vincent Simard. George Todd playing his chances very close here, waiting for a mistake out of that of the 120. You've seen that already plenty of drivers around him have been quite accident prone. I think Todd is just playing things nice and safe whilst he continues to learn the new machine, or so I'm led to believe, as now we see a bit more of a proactive approach to things as George Todd now presses onto the fight for 3rd place against Vincent Simard. The number 39 has a stop-go 30-second penalty. That's for Christophe Dupois for speeding in the pit lane. So just where you thought it couldn't get worse for some, believe me, it can. Down through turn 1. Number 120 taking a little bit of a cut there over the curves. Now that can upset the balance if abused. It does need to be very, very careful here in this defensive fight of third place. We cut away from Simard to see if we can catch on board with the attacking point of view. We just quickly see here Lebay unlapping himself from Karl Martel, but we want to try and focus our attentions here to some of the other fights on track. We see also there was the other side of that perspective. Now we want to catch on board here with George Todd. His first race in the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. We're very used to seeing his talents on display over on the Sunday League, where he's more of a frequent flyer over at Ferrari's quarters with their 296. This is definitely a far cry of the confines of the 296. He's ditched the mid-engine layout for front-engined, and he's gained 2 more cylinders, up from a V6 to a V8, and this thing is a real brute. Wasn't a particularly popular choice in its day. George Todd, though, making decent work of things amidst a chaotic start here in Brands. Corti and Simard then up the road from Todd. You can see the other 2 in front of him, the slightly lighter blue of the 2 being Corti, the darker blue of the Emil Frey Racing colours being Vincent Simard. Up the road from them, you can see is Christophe Dupois. That stop-go 30-second penalty to serve. You see, looking up the inside, dare I say it, Vincent Simard is looking for it on Anthony Corti. Will he be brave enough to make a lunge there down through Paddock Hill? No, not the case, but can he look to leverage that into a potential lunge down at Druids? It seems a little too far away from him at this time. It's not stopped him from arcing the nose to the inside. He's covering off here from George Todd right behind him on the exit of Druids down through to turn 3. We see, though, trouble for the 962 at this time. Yellow flags are out. I believe that to be for not Christophe Dupois, sorry. Carl David Bourdreau, as the 44 is also caught up in the mix. So we are going to try and investigate what's going on here for both the 44 and the 962. So that's Dan Junior Poulon. The 962 of Carl David Bourdreau also seemingly caught up in the mix there. The 44 stranded with the 707 approaching quickly from behind. That's Stephen Black as the 44 continues to spin here. Trouble for Dan Junior Poulon. You can see the face of that Jaguar hanging very, very low. There's Martin de la Chevrotier making his way around before we get to Clark Curve. Yellow flags. I'd say they're very much so still out. I was getting a little bit ahead of myself there. You can see the race leader, Byron Forrest, making his way around. Surely, can Poulon even guide the car to the pit lane? It's already a bit of a tight run in. You've got a chicane to deal with. I don't even know if he's going to be able to angle it. Oh, just about. Just about there for the 44 of Dan Poulon. That is definitely a very, very worn-out Jaguar. Highly, highly doubt we'll be seeing much of him for the rest of this race. Hopefully we'll be able to see more of him heading into the next qualifying. Stop go 39 still with 1 more lap to serve, so the 39 runs the risk of being disqualified. We cut back in with our 3-way fight for second place. The battle of the blues, as it were, between Corti, Simard and Todd, making their way down through the Graham Hill bend at turn 3. See here, Simard is definitely taking a much more elbows out approach. Now that he's started to get to grips with this car, he had a few hiccups here and there. But now that he's ironed out a lot of the kinks in his Jaguar, he's feeling a lot more confident as we enter lap 9. 16 minutes, we're nearly at the halfway mark, so time really does fly when you're having fun, and these 3 are having a riot here for the control of the last of those podium positions. George Todd looks to potentially make his way onto a podium on debut, an unprecedented sign for the number 12. We also see here the potential first podiums for Anthony Corti and Vincent Simard, if memory does serve correctly. We know certainly it is for Corti. I'm not actually 100% if it was for Simard. I do seem to recall he had a very solid performance in the last couple of rounds. We'll just double check that. No, this would be his first. So Simard is still competing for a first of his accolades here. First ever podium for the 120. Of course, this is sadly going to work against him if he stays where he is right now, because he will be skipping out on a longer form of qualifying in the next race to follow. 39 then has been disqualified from this race, having failed to serve his stop-and-go 30-second penalty. Christophe Dupois, on his return to competition here in the Competizione Performance League, is out of round 5, race 1. And this is a very rare sign indeed. It is super, super rare we ever see a driver get black flagged out of a race. Not entirely sure whether or not we'll even see him for the next qualifying session. We don't know for how long exactly that's going to hold. Realistically, you could make the assumption he'll be back for Quali 2. As we see here, the battle of second place now gets 2 abreast on their way down the Pilgrim's Drop up to Hawthorne Hill. Around the outside, though, Vincent Simard has not got a lot of space to work with as we make our way to the Derek Minter Straight. He's trying for the inside. We see yellow flags are out past the Graham Hill bend for the 99 of Carl Martel in a spot of bother. We still stay on board, though, with Simard v Corti for second. Following closely on their trail is George Todd. You can see off in the grass goes the 919 of Anthony Corti. Slots back in behind Vincent Simard, now up to second, but with George Todd breathing down his neck there, you can see practically pushing him out through turn 8. Making our way down to turn 9, he slots back in behind Anthony Corti's number 919. Vincent Simard now moves up to second place. Hard fought there for Simard. Right behind him, though, he has not lost present sight of that 919, nor the number 12 trailing there in fourth place. George Todd, an omnipresent sight in the rearview mirror of either of these two. We quickly cut away to see where other fights may be concerned with as we're past that halfway mark right now. I don't think anything is matching the ferocity of these three on track. They have shown fantastic resolve in the face of a frankly bizarre start. And for one such driver, George Todd, this is his first race in this series, so it is really quite a baptism of fire. He's in at the deep end. No more water wings for the number 12. You've got to swim the channel. Down through Hawthorne Hill we go. Out through the Pilgrim's Drop. Watching on board here with George Todd. Now, this is all in contention overall for second place. I'd say feasibly right now he'd be gunning for third over Anthony Corti. Vincent Simard has really had his elbows out into that opening half, and in the second half it seems to be no different. We've already seen struggles here over the Sheen curve. You can see tucking further to the inside is Anthony Corti, not looking to run over and into the grass and lose another position like he did to Simard not too long ago. Looking as where things are concerned in terms of other battles on track, this is the closest of its kind. There are quite a few in contention right now up the inside after a bit of a poor run out of turn 9. Anthony Corti looking to lose out here to George Todd. Todd up the inside and onto the podium on his first drive here in the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. But for how much longer? As we see there, being slowly caught back up by the 919, back on the retaliation in towards Druids, but runs out past the apex. Both of them do, for that matter. A very early apex for the number 12 to try and give himself the momentum to catch up to Vincent Simard. So now where he sets his sights on second place, we'll set our sights on the current standings. Byron Forrest continues to lead, now having doubled his gap to Vincent Simard, up from 8 seconds to 16 seconds. Byron Forrest gunning for his first ever race win here in the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series, who already been on an exciting series of first. We saw the first Jaguar win for Giovanni Battiali. Could we be seeing another new name on the charts? 11 minutes will tell us different. Vincent Simard now up to second place. We see him up the road here right now, being intercepted by George Todd on his first race here in the series. Now up to third and up the road from Anthony Corti in fourth place. Alex Albert in fifth. Not too far behind him is David Tanguay. So we'll have a look around whilst these three continue their conquest inside of the podium. We see Alex Albert being closely pursued by David Tanguay. Up the road from him there appears to be Clinton Bourne, has lapped traffic. Tanguay, despite several incidents and trouble with stability on that number 30, is continuing the fighting spirit forward. Now up the road quite a ways here from Andrew Veldkamp, who himself has present company off of Timo de Tosto for 7th place. De Tosto in 8th, Carl Martel in 9th, and Casey Miles in the top 10 in the number 96. Stephen Black in 11th place, Julio Bahena in 12th. Clinton Bourne being lapped there by Tanguay in 13th place. Ultimately ends up losing position out to Christian Lebay with the fastest lap. Now comes up to 13th from 14th place. So that's Bourne down to 14th. Kevin Quain in 15th. Carl David Boudreau in 16th. Martin de la Chevrotier in 17th place with Richard Cecil in 18th. Dan Junior Poulon in 19th with Giovanni Battiali remaining in the pit lane. Christophe Dupois black flagged and disqualified from this round. We now see George Todd is actually up the road from Vincent Simard at the time we've been discussing this, putting him up to second place. So this is a remarkable story from the number 12. So in the time we last picked up from him there, he has now shifted not only from third to second, but it looks to be doing so with quite some vigor in his step, as now losing traction, losing time no less, as we see up the road there. That's Martin de la Chevrotier avoiding contact there. All three of our drivers had to take a little pump of the brakes just before we hit Sterling's. Just to address some earlier comments we saw in chat there, audio issue was my not so smart TV. All good now on PC. Yeah, we've noticed that as well. A lot of smart TVs especially on when you try and run Twitch on them, they really have a tendency to bug out. We don't know what's going on with them. Well, obviously, don't keep up to date with smart TVs, but it's a case where we've had that complaint quite a few times. We love it. We love when people say that they've been watching TRTN on their smart TV. I mean, I even had one guy who was watching TRTN in his car on like the Apple CarPlay in. Admittedly, it was in like rush hour traffic, so I was like, it's kind of a bad idea. Up the inside, there goes the 120. Vincent Simard, he's again getting his elbows out. We've seen real commitment out of these two here. George Todd and Vincent Simard, a little bit of door dinging there as they make their way down the Pilgrim's Drop. This is getting a little bit elbows out now. Definitely so between the two as contact between the 12 and the 120. Both of them into the gravel. Through goes Anthony Cotti. Oh my goodness, look at that there. I mean, 1996 Silverstone BTCC round. I mean, it's calling and it wants its punchline back, as we can see there. That's some Cleland level stuff from these two. Down through into the gravel. That got nasty between the two. We're into the British chapter, and with it comes proper white knuckle door-to-door pushing and shoving. Not sure that he's made the greatest impressions with the stewards after that one. And so does bring about the effective death of one of the greatest battles we've seen in race 1 or 2 today. Anthony Cotti running free in second place. Now 3.6 seconds up the road of a continually worsening condition of that of George Todd. Now the nose of his Jaguar even further damaged. David Tanguay moves up to 4th. Timo de Tosto in 5th. Andrew Veldkamp in 6th. Carl Martel in 7th. Casey Miles in 8th. Vincent Simard retires to the pit lane, so it seems, or is either into the pit lane on emergency repairs. Bear in mind, that incident was down at Hawthorns. It's highly, highly unlikely that he's been able to get all the way around the track in such a short amount of time. Stephen Black in 10th, with Alex Albert now dropping down the order. That pushes LeBay up to 11th, and with Vincent Simard in the pits, it will be a return to the top 10, so a little bit of redemption, a little bit of damage control. Moreover, he's kept himself very, very clear at this time of Giovanni Battiali, who I imagine he was assuming after Laguna Seca was one of his primary threats to the championship, but I think he may have been looking in the wrong direction. It was a 18-point gap, 120 points to 102, if I'm not mistaken. It's either that or a 12-point gap. As a matter of fact, we've got the data right here, so why guess? As you can see, it is an 18-point gap between LeBay and Forrest, with Forrest leading this race, and if he continues to deliver on such fantastic form where we continue to see races get this bloodied, Byron Forrest could sneak his way up into the championship right now. He has fought hard for where he stands on this field right now. And he's definitely feeling a little bit lucky today. But as you can see, luck will only get you so far. Byron Forrest has done 90% of this race on grit alone to put himself double figures up the road from the nearest car. He has led by a landslide, the survivor of this disastrous start here in Brands Hatch. But he reigns supreme at this time. 6 minutes before the checkered flag flies, and it could fly for the 824. Anthony Cotti looking at his first ever podium amidst a heated fight with George Todd and Vincent Simard, the 12 and the 120. Todd maintains 3rd for the time being, but Tanguay is closing in and closing in fast. You can see getting up alongside him is the 119, unlapping himself. That's Christian LeBay in 10th place. You can see the number 12 trying to allow for some space there for the 119 to come around the outside, knowing that he's got the pace over him, especially as the condition continues to get worse for that nose cone. Surprised, even in its current state, that it's somehow still hanging onto the frame of the car. You can see David Tanguay has reeled in George Todd. We're going to try and catch on board with Tanguay here as he's already up and alongside Todd before we've even hit the Sheen curve. Descended upon him like nightfall in that number 30. Now up onto the podium. Tanguay having a brilliant return here. After a mixed bag of a race, 30 minutes, now 25 minutes into this race right now, has proven to be just a perfect melting pot for the right amount of insanity to give results like these. David Tanguay now up onto the podium. He'll be one of 3 drivers to be hit with that one-shot qualifying penalty. So he, Byron Forrest and Anthony Cotti, as it stands, will all get 1 opportunity to lap in qualifying 2 in the preparations for the second of 2 races today. So a significant handicap for success, and that seems to be a new system being trialled by the folks at Competizione Performance League. We do thoroughly look forward to seeing how that one plays out, so we'll be keeping very close attention here to those 3 heading into the next qualifying session. 4.5 minutes left to go, though. We're in the final chapters of race 1 and what has been possibly the most bizarre race in the history of the Competizione Performance League. Certainly has been in division here in the Jaguar GT3 Revival. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. We've seen a few wipeouts. I think Watkins Glen was one that sprung to mind. There was a 3 or 4 car pile-up down through the S's, but nothing that really goes to the same level as what we observed down through Paddock Hill Bend. Leading that charge then, Byron Forrest with 4 minutes to the checkered flag. We see here a real flurry of cars, quite a few caught up in a fight towards the back of the field. Julio Bahena versus Stephen Black. Now as he breaks clear, we see though into the wall. That looked like trouble immediately off the bat for the 616. Andrew Veldkamp in trouble. Carl Martel closing in at a rate of knots. The 607 up the road also in trouble. That's Kevin Quain. This has been the Achilles heel of the Jaguars so far. We've seen a pretty solid batch of races over in North America, but when we head into Brands Hatch, this is seemingly the kryptonite of this once glorious machine. Nonetheless, Andrew Veldkamp maintains 6th place on track. We look here as the final chapter descends upon the grid. We see it has been a very, very controversial race indeed, rife with drama, as now we drop to only 20 cars left in this race, feasibly 19 cars. As Giovanni Badiali has still yet to re-emerge 17 laps after his fated incident. Byron Forrest leads the charge ahead of Anthony Cotti with David Tanguay in 3rd place. George Todd down to 4th and looks to be to the back of the top 5 in a moment's time, with Timo de Tosto closing in fast. Time is short for that number 12 and the 58 looking to capitalise on the exit of Hawthorns. Through the Derek Minter straight in towards Westfields. This is going to get very, very close between the two. Todd is not looking to lose another position today. Looks to hold centre mass of the road there. Good area denial from the number 12. Doing the best that he can with a very bad set of cards. You see there the 58 very nearly intercepted by the number 18. That's Julio Bahena in 10th place. Looking to unlap himself from these two in 4th and 5th. Right now, though, we're going to stay on board for just a moment here with Timo de Tosto in this fight. Right now for 4th place. Looking to run things high and around the outside. Squeezed there to the right-hand side, or left-hand side, I should say, of the track. The 58 runs into the gravel. So squeezed out of line there through turn 1. George Todd now has a stop-go 30-second penalty to his name after the end of race 1. And with time such a short concept here, he's going to need to serve it now or face the consequences therein. Timo de Tosto looks to be gaining a free position, then up to 4th in a moment's time. Gotta say, this was a much more elbows out approach than I was expecting to see out of George Todd. We've seen him to be a pretty stern customer back in the Sunday League. But as he makes his way into Jaguars, he was not taking any prisoner in today's fight. Right now, beginning that final run around track, Byron Forrest, our race leader for 20 laps in now, leading by nearly a full lap to Anthony Cotti in 2nd. Trouble for the number 5 out of the Graham Hill Bend. This is down at turn 3. Richard Cecil re-emerges on the track. We'll see how everything stacks out in a moment's time. Already having closed the gap since their last incident, Timo de Tosto has not forgotten the crimes of the number 12 and is not looking to play nice coming into turn 9. Turn 1 quickly approaching, but does George Todd consider his odds for a run into the pit lane? No, he's just going to have to face the music when the checkered flag flies, and de Tosto right alongside him. He's tried around the outside, now he tries for the inside. Timo de Tosto up to 4th place, leaps there up over the number 12. Not much longer, though, to the checkered flag, where that may be among the final moves of this incredibly bizarre race today. One thing is for certain, as we catch on board here with Byron Forrest, he has waited far too long in his mind for a day like this to arrive, and it seems the perfect storm to have given him a performance of the ages. Making his way then down through turn 9 with the clock ticking down to 0 as the checkered flag flies in the face of the 824. Byron Forrest wins race 1 of 2 here in round 5 in Brands Hatch, and what a performance for the 824. He has waited a long, long time for this, and what a result. Anthony Cotti, not far from the line here, looks to take his first ever podium here in the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. As a matter of fact, could be his first ever podium in a Competizione Performance League Championship. On his way down to the line then, Cotti on his first ever Jaguar podium. Second place, David Tanguay, not far from the line, on his return to competition after GT4, crosses the line in third place. What a result between these three. Timo de Tosto was among the last moves we saw being made today. This one over George Todd as he makes his way down to the line from fourth place. A fantastic turnaround for the 58 today. Great points on the charts there for Timo de Tosto. George Todd into the pit lane to serve that stop go, and that looks to potentially give it up to Andrew Veldkamp, who crosses the line in fifth place. Carl Markle making his way to the line, intercepts Todd before he gets to the timing line, pushes Todd down to seventh, Markle to sixth. Casey Miles right now having a spot of bother. You see George Todd finishes with still 60 seconds of penalties to serve. We'll see exactly how that one stacks out. The bottom line, though, for race 1 of 2 here in round 5. Don't go anywhere. We get to do this all over again for Quali 2. What a result there we've seen, folks. That really was quite something. Byron Forrest, though, your winner for race 1 of 2 today. And he'll be one of 3 drivers to have that single shot qualifying. So very close eyes here for Anthony Cotti, Byron Forrest and David Tanguay. That'll be your 3 one-shot qualifiers for Quali 2 today. But a long awaited race win for Byron Forrest. That has got to be among the most satisfying things for him. After a long-winded chase, started all the way back in the Porsches to get a win in a championship. Waited until the Jaguar era and the perfect storm to give rise to the 824. Now, not long from the discussion of the second qualifying session, and it has truly been quite a bizarre one. As we see there on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend, there is Anthony Cotti, his first ever Jaguar podium. David Tanguay also relishing in a return to form here. Returns to competition and into third place. In terms of driver of the day, it's a tough one to pick. Obviously, with Byron Forrest having surfed the crowd to his first ever race win, it would be tough to not be putting him in that high nomination spot. I would also say it would be honorary mentions to Christian Lebay having surfed the madness after that opening incident, of which he was the first victim of, to put himself inside of that top 10 with the fastest lap. That took some serious determination in such a short span of time. That is a tough one, though. I think I might have to leave that one up to the folks at Competizione Performance League, because that was really quite something to behold. You can see there your final results. Byron Forrest wins in race 1 of 2. Anthony Cotti in second, with David Tanguay in third place. Timo de Tosto fourth. Andrew Veldkamp fifth. Carl Markle sixth. Casey Miles seventh. George Todd in eighth. And Christian Lebay in ninth. Rounding out the top 10, Julio Behena. Further results there down the line. Quain, Bourne, Bourdreau, Black, De La Chevrotière, Cecil, Simard and Poulon. We see there DNFs for Albert, Badiali, and looking further down the line there as well, Simard and Dupois. Actually, not Simard, sorry, that's my mistake. It's just for Dupois. My mistake there. Obviously, a DSQ for Dupois. It was quite a bizarre sign to see that Simard was able to get to the checkered flag. We really did think that was the end of the line after his incident with the number 12. I'm sure that one will be talked about for quite some time. But all eyes then resting on Tanguay, Forrest and Cotti, are 3 one-shot qualifiers. That's going to be an exciting story heading into qualifying 2. Taking a look at where things are concerned in terms of the regs for today. And taking a look, once again, we've just exited race 1 into Quali 2 and into race 2 coming up in just a moment's time. Of course, podium finishers for race 1 get only 1 flying lap in qualifying for race 2. So let's see how that one pans out, as we're not far from the start of the next qualifying session here in round 5 of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series, powered by Malwa Transport and Assure Action Transport Expert. What a start then to the British chapter, and it was quite hotly awaited amongst this grid today. After 4 races back-to-back 60-minute races apiece in North America across a myriad of tracks, including Indianapolis, Watkins Glen, the Circuit of the Americas, and Laguna Seca. Our first ever visit to Great Britain has been met with uproar. Not long now from the discussion of qualifying 2, and right into it then, we follow on board with our previous race winner, that being Byron Forrest. But you can see The pit lane waits for no man, and making their way out almost immediately comes Richard Cecil. In the number 5, then following from behind him, that's Julio Bahena in the number 18, the 119 and the 607, not far off their trails, that being Christian LeBay and Kevin Quain making their way down Paddock Hill Bend. The number 120, Vincent Simard on his way out. There goes Simard. 99 behind him there, that's Carl Markle. All of them on their way down towards Druids. Now we'll be keeping a very close ear to the ground here on any movements out of Coty, Tangway or Forest. Those three are one-shot qualifiers. We'll be paying extra close attention to them over the course of this session. Out on the track at the moment, the 36 and the 39, as well as the 616 and the number 50 and the number 6 and the number 12. So a lot of drivers already on their way out. Still see, though, no movement from Forest, no movement from Tangway, and no movement from Coty. Clinton Bourne on his way back out, seemingly having ran into some trouble on the start of his qualifying endeavours. We did see that the number 6 was one of several cars out on track for the start of qualifying today. Now, to bring up those qualifying predictions from last round, of course, it still tells us the same story here with Clinton Bourne likely to be, I'd say, within that top 5 again. He did show great resolve in qualifying, and moreover didn't have maybe the best of expectations for today's race. I think a lot of drivers got pushed around, a lot of drivers ended up where they didn't want to be. I think that was pretty self-explanatory. Well, on his way out at the moment, here's Byron Forrest, first out onto that field. Actually, as I say that, emerging right behind him is the 919, so these two only get one shot. The only driver yet to have taken there, oh, there he goes, there is David Tangway. So all three of our one-shot qualifiers are out on track. We'll be paying extra close attention to them at this time. Of course, the first driver to set those flying laps appears to be at this time the number 5 of Richard Cecil. They'll be following him closely as well. But the first two times to appear on the chart would be Cecil and Bahena, so it seems they're on their way out through Hawthorns. We'll be paying extra close attention, as mentioned before, to Tangway, to Forest and to Coty. Leading that charge for the one-shot qualifiers, though, is Byron Forrest. See how he stacks up against the rest of the field here. We are expecting another pole position out of Christian LeBay. Make no mistake of it. This is going to be quite an intense one for Byron Forrest. We follow now. No pressure at all here for the 824. Now, here's a one-shot qualifier. So one opportunity, make or break for the 824, the 919, and the number 30. Down across the line then, telemetry is live for Byron Forrest. His one-shot qualifying has officially begun. Down through Paddock Hill Bend he goes then, already having made about a couple hundredths there before the run down into Druids. Now, bear in mind, I'm pretty sure this telemetry is based off of race pace. So if he can be anywhere near as close as where he was over the course of race 1, he's in safe hands. Now in the exit of the Graham Hill Bend in towards Surtees we go. You can see bouncing between an improvement and detriment. Now through turn 4 he goes, and he lost a lot of steam through turn 4 there, and it's very easy to miss the apex. It's a very odd shaped corner. The geometry of that corner is very bizarre as well. Uphill left-hander, super easy to understeer, very hard to nip it in the bud for a perfect apex. Out through Westfields we go then, through the Dingledale. This is looking very close indeed for Byron Forrest. He only gets one opportunity to do this, and the same story for Coty, same story for Tangway. You see here with Byron Forrest making his way down towards the line. We were following on board as he's the leading car of that pack. We'll go from Byron Forrest to Anthony Coty. So Forrest down towards the line. It's his one opportunity to do so. Across the line goes Forrest, 8th fastest. So next to the line comes Anthony Coty on his first of possible any flying laps. He's 11th fastest. Then we see for David Tangway right across the line on his first and only, and he's 7th fastest. So seemingly they're winning that qualifying duel between these three. Tanguay emerges the fastest of our one-shot qualifiers. There's your podium setters, but looking on the grand scheme of things, Christian Lebay fastest so far. We're over halfway into the session. Vincent Simard second fastest, Kevin Quain third fastest, George Todd in fourth, and Giovanni Badiali up to third there, just over that last lap. A contact between himself, and that was not Timo de Tosto, but I believe that's a B then, if memory does serve correctly. Yes, that was Christophe Dubois. Very easy to mix those two up in a vacuum. And the two white Jaguars, but 39 hit up the back end in through turn one. Very bizarre stuff here at the trailing end of qualifying. The Lebay currently on a 1:23.935. Now specking up as to how that looks against his predicted times. We're seeing we are not too far off from the Lebay on paper. 0.6 of a second is what divides theory from reality. Down towards the line then comes the 1:19. Can it be to an improvement? Across the line he goes, sadly. Not this time, but he still finds himself a considerable measure up the road from Simard or Badiali. Badiali up to third and getting very, very close now. As you can see, the gap between the pair in and around that 48 thousandths of a second margin on those podium positions. And still a very, very tight top five we see here with Kevin Quain in fourth. And not far at all from him, 130 thousandths of a second between himself and George Todd to round out that top five. All five of them within a second of that fastest time, as per usual here in the Competizione Performance League. We have started to see the formation of the Big Five. We still don't yet know exactly who is part of that Big Five, but I think we're starting to see quite a few names appear all too often, and the British chapter seemingly turning a lot of that power dynamic on its head. Down to the line comes Timo de Tosto in the 58 from 6th place up to 4th and ahead of Todd and Quain. Todd now relegated outside of that top 5. Quain down to 5th, the 44 across the line a moment ago, and that's Dan Junior Poulon into 11th place just behind Carl David Bourdreau, but just up the road from Byron Forrest after his one and done one-shot qualifier. The 44 though, huge hit with the tyre wall after the Paddock Hill bend. That surely is the end of qualifying stories for the 44. Unless he's able to get that car patched up and out as soon as possible. He is bleeding time here on track. The 6:07 next to the line. Kevin Quain looking for redemption. Up and ahead of Timo de Tosto. Can he find it as he crosses the line? He's second fastest on the closing minutes of Quali 2. This is a broadly different show for the 6:07. Quain now up onto the front row ahead of Simard, ahead of Badiali, no less as well. The 99 heading to the line. Here comes Carl Martel in that bright fluorescent green Jaguar from 8th to 7th. Up the road there from Richard Cecil. Next to the line on what appears to be a valid flying lap is Martin de la Chevrotier. Out through turn 9, down towards that start-finish line. 19th at this time for de la Chevrotier. 58. Closely following on his trails. We also see an improvement just before that for the 36 of Alex Albert. Now up to the top 10. The 58 of Timo de Tosto, though, brings it to the pit lane. And that could be the end of his qualifying. He's currently 5th fastest up the road from George Todd and Carl Martel. Giovanni Badiali 4th. Vincent Simard in 3rd. Kevin Quain, though, a real showstopper in 2nd. Next to the line comes Carl David Bourdreau on a flurry of times following from behind him, including that of Lebay and Badiali. So do expect some shockwaves here very, very shortly. From in front of them was the number 6, Lebay to the line, though. Couldn't find an improvement as Badiali as he crosses the line. Yes, 3rd. And with one more lap to spare, the 998 now onto the podium positions, leading that 2nd row, and by an incredibly thin margin there, as we're seeing in the range of about 30, I want to say 36 thousandths of a second between Badiali and Simard on that 2nd row alone. The 99 back to the line. Here comes Carl Martel. Hesitated for a shout there to go back into the pit lane, but has scrubbed a lot of momentum here. That's not going to leave him with many options at the end of qualifying. Ultimately, that split-second decision ended up creating more harm than good. Carl Martel preemptively calls it quits on his qualifying endeavours. 7th at the best of times here. The number 50 nearest to the line. Martin de la Chevrotier passes up Stephen Black as he makes his way to the checkered line. He's still got enough time for one more flying lap. Still 19th in this session. Looking at it right now, needs to find about 4 tenths and 22 thousandths over Andrew Veldkamp in 18th place. Checking next in on the exit of Stirlings in towards Clark Curve comes Carl David Bourdreau From behind him, the number 6 of Clinton Bourne, then the 119 of Christian LeBay, and then the 998 at the end of qualifying here in Quali 2 on the upcoming run into race 2 today of round 5. Across the line comes Carl David Bourdreau to 9th place. We see Clinton Bourne across the line, second fastest, and we're not done yet, because there goes Giovanni Battiali to second fastest, Bourne third. So we are once again with a LeBay, Battiali, Bourne top 3. That's the second qualifying running where we've seen that. The gaps on the second row, 0.02 of a second. And as we see across the line, George Todd exactly level with the times of Kevin Crane. But by nature of having done it first, the 6:07 maintains 4th, Todd in 5th at the end of a hectic second qualifying. Next to the line, and final to the line, I should say, is Dan Junior Poulon. Rounding out Quali 2 before we get into another 30 minutes of racing here, hopefully to go better than the last time here in Brands Hatch. Across the line, 13th fastest then at the end of qualifying 2 for Dan Junior Poulon in the 44. But looking back into that top 3, it's LeBay from Battiali from Bourne once again. Does history run the habit of repeating itself? Let's hope for the sake of these 3 coming into the second installment of our racing here in Brands Hatch that is not the case. So looking at the end of qualifying 2, where we're at now, the end of that 10-minute qualifying, we're into race 2 for another 30 minutes here in Brands Hatch. Looking at where that stacks out on the calendar, when we're done here in Brands Hatch, we'll be getting the opportunity to do it all over again, but this time at another duel of the MSV lineup, the Donington Park circuit on November 25th. You thoroughly look forward to that one. Then we'll be over to Snetterton for round 7 and then Alton Park for round 8. Before we head to Zolder on December 16th for the first ever triple stint. And it's going to be a very, very fun time if these double stint races have really been anything to go by. Looking at the grid as it forms up here for race 2 of 2 today for round 5. Christian LeBay back onto pole position. Battiali back onto the front row and Bourne back into 3rd place. Kevin Crane in 4th with George Todd in 5th. Vincent Simard right alongside him in what is going to be a very, very brazen top 6 there. I mean, you're looking at these two who went side by side and ran each other off the track. I believe we still have that on the replays if we can get a look back into it. So this was their incident from back in race 1 between the 12 and the 120. They were really getting elbows out in for second place, and that's ultimately the fallout of it. I still don't really know what to make head or tails of that, but these two now start alongside one another. So think about how dangerous that's going to be for their potential conquests inside of that top 5 once again. From behind them, Timo de Tosto in 7th place, Carl Martel in 8th, with Richard Cecil in 9th, and Carl David Bourdreau once again rounds out the top 10. David Tanguay in 11th, seemingly having won that one-shot qualifying fight ahead of Forrest and Coty. They're down in 15th and 16th. More on that in a moment's time. Rounding out that 6th row, though, is Alex Albert in 12th place. Dan Junior Poulon, we saw him at the end of qualifying and starts in 13th place ahead of Julio Bahena, who's had a bit of a downturn since his last qualifying session there. The 18 now in 14th place. But rounding out the top 15 was last round's race winner, Byron Forrest. On his one-shot qualifying experience, ultimately fell short of his fellow podium sitter David Tanguay and fell short of a top 10 for this race start. He starts at the back of the top 15. Joining him on that 8th row, though, is Anthony Coty, his fellow podium sitter in the 919. Christophe Dupois in 17th place, and in 18th place is Andrew Veldkamp. Martin de la Chevrotière in 19th, with Casey Miles rounding out the top 20 once again, and Stephen Black starts from the pit lane, sorry, got ahead of myself. He starts from 21st. Last round, he started from the pit lane. Will we be seeing that again? Is another question entirely. I don't think he's gunning to start from the pit lane. As it turned out, for the 707, actually wasn't the worst gamble in the world, especially given how that race went for the starting lap. One tiny collision, I would like to preface as well, is what caused all of that trouble in the opening lap. One tiny bump between the leading pair of Battiali and LeBay is what created a domino effect unlike, I think, anything we've ever seen in our broadcast history on TRTN. Now, I can name several times we've had quite a few wipeouts. I mean, all you need to do is take a look at the last couple of rounds on NLRL where they've had double-figure DNFs. It was slaughterhouse material. Absolute slaughterhouse material. You could even look as far back as if you wanted, if you were been with us for a few years, you would have remembered when we still covered F1. There was one such race, the Belgian Grand Prix back on F1 2021. The race result went so poorly, and this is really the first of its kind. We were forced to pull all mentions of the broadcast because of just how poorly it went. There were I think we started with double figures, we ended with less than 3 drivers. And I think that's the first time I've ever made that information readily known since it's happened. But really, I don't think I've ever seen anything on that caliber until today, because that was brutal. That was like a bull in a china shop. Or I suppose a bull more proverbially in a Jaguar dealership. Down through turn 3, though, we watch once again with Christian LeBay, who I imagine is a bit of a set of worries, perhaps, heading into this race. He's definitely going to be feeling his heart in his throat heading down into turn 1. This is not going to be a particularly comfy ride for the 119. He is looking now to get as far as humanly possible away from that 998. Looking into the last race wins before today, of course, with Byron Forrest now joining that tally of race wins. We see, though, before it was Giovanni Badiali to have won in the last of the American chapters over in California, in Monterey County, over at the Laguna Seca Raceway. So he's going to try and get himself as far up the road here from Badiali, because it was a starting grid just like this that gave rise to Badiali's lead. Moreover, it was a starting grid like this today that, through one method or another, gave rise to Forrest's lead here in Great Britain. Down through Westfield, then towards the Dingledale. This is a very fearsome sight for the 119. Seeing the 998 this close, seeing Bourne as well not too far away, it would be naive to not rule him into this fight as well. When these two start to settle, that number 6 is on them almost immediately, and we've seen great resolve by Bourne. Last race just wasn't it for him. He was one of several casualties in the opening flurry. Now, as we see, beginning that formation process once again. Well, I must say, this is definitely one of the most tense state of affairs I think I've ever had in observing a race start, especially given how things went no less than 40 minutes ago. This is going to get dicey, folks. I make no mistake of that one. In through turn 9, does history have the trouble of repeating itself? Well, today we're about to find out for race 2 of round 5 of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series, powered by Mawa Transport and the Shiraction Transport Expert. We see the same top 3 of the grid before in race 1, leading the charge down towards the line once again here. 30 minutes against the clock for the last of 2 races here in Brands Hatch to kick off the British chapter, and we're green and raising hopefully to a better start than last here in Brands Hatch. As we make our way in through Paddock Hill Bend, you can see much more hesitant this time around. Maybe not so much for the drivers behind our front row, but we see a much cleaner start in the grand scheme of things heading down into Druids for the first time. LeBay from Badiali. We see Kevin Quain getting his hands full there, alongside that of Clinton Bourne, trying to get the leg up on him, but ultimately loses in his defense of 3rd place. Looking further down the line, we can see things have been relatively tepid, all things considered. The most intense fighting we're seeing here in that spread of the last of the top 5. Kevin Quain now up to 3rd from that of Clinton Bourne, who's forced into the iron sights of George Todd. Vincent Simard right behind him, and there's Carl Martel as well to form a very swift train of cars here. In and amongst them, we can see the number 12 closely trailed by the 120 in towards Hawthorns. The 99 lagging a little bit behind them there. The number 5 right behind them, and so too following is Timo de Tosto in the 58. That white and black Jaguar right behind the bright orange number 5. That being Richard Cecil. Right now, all things considered, not the worst start in the world. And we're watching here with George Todd at the back of that top 5, very closely pressed in on the number 6 in front of him. Clinton Bourne, who started from 3rd, fell to 4th to Kevin Quain, who has had a brilliant start here in Brands Hatch. Out through turn 9, no one collecting any gravel just yet. We see here down the line, David Tanguay getting arm to arm here with the 18 of Julio Bahena up the road from him. We can see side-by-side action between Timo de Tosto and Carl David Bourdreau, 2 abreast, and then falls into single file with Bourdreau looking at his chances up the inside. A little bit of a flutter there from the 58 gives him the opening that he's been looking for. David Tanguay looking to follow the line here of Carl David Bourdreau as we make our way in through Druids. Does he surf that line? Yes, he does. Following in his wake there, you can see from behind the 58 of Ditosto is Bahena in the number 18, that bright fluorescent yellowish green Jaguar there right up alongside these two on their way into Surtees. It has been a much more amicable start than one would have predicted. Given the precedent set by the last race, this has been superb from all drivers so far. Let's maybe not jinx things too early. As making our way up through Hawthorne here, we can see quite the extensive fight going on now. George Todd, we can see pressed up into it with Carl Markle right behind him. Now up the inside through Westfields. He's looking to run the risk here around the outside in towards the Dingledale. We'll be looking around the outside once again unless the 99 succeeds, which doesn't appear to be the case. And it's contact between the 12 and the 99, then collected by the number 5. Another major incident. Maybe to a lesser degree than what we saw the last time, but that's trouble for George Todd. You see here contact out through the Sheen curve. We were still watching with George Todd. We saw the driver that has now collided with him. That was Richard Cecil. He's got a little bit of damage there on the nose of his Jaguar, but nothing too severe. Looking at how things have scoped out in nearly 5 minutes of racing, where it was a broadly different scenario facing us in race 1. It is not the same story this time around. A much more smooth sailing experience for LeBay and Badiali. They continue to field that front row. Kevin Quay now up to 3rd, Clinton Bourne to 4th, Vincent Simard in 5th, and Carl Martel in 6th, Richard Cecil in 7th with David Tanguay in 8th, and Carl David Bourdreau, you can see here, is marooned amongst fighting for 9th place up the road from Bahena, Ditosto, and you can see there Byron Forrest making his way through the woodwork, now up the road from Ditosto and up to 11th. Looking to gain time here on David Tanguay. He was his fellow podium sitter in that last race. He wants to try and get the leg up on race day to prove himself the better. In through Westfields, right up to the back end of Julio Bahena, scratching to within a chance of a top 10 right now. Byron Forrest is a man on a mission, already high from the successes of race 1 and his first ever victory in Jaguar. We see Bahena running into all kind of trouble in front of Forrest, hit up the back end. There was very little time to react for him. We see there, this is what the incident was out between the Sheen curve. We saw stepping out there, we saw the start of it, big compression over the rear axle, ultimately made the car go light. The 824 was still on the racing line. There was nothing really more he could do to turn the car to the right hand side. Even if he had given it full lock, you have to forgive us for the slight desync that happens every now and again whenever we reconnect. You can see the ping going absolutely haywire, 428 milliseconds. That is bad. It is really bad, isn't it? That is dreadful. And you should think, for the amount I spend on my broadband, that I'd be getting better connections than this. Oh well. Byron Forrest, though, up into the top 10. Some could argue on a bit of a controversial turn. I mean, you look at the scenario that he found himself in with the 18 having to rapidly slow itself down, otherwise it spins itself out. It was still stuck on the racing line. Speaking of the 18, Julio Bahena now drops down to 14th place from behind him. Casey Miles has got his hands full here with Andrew Veldkamp and Timo Tosto returning into fighting spirit after his incident from earlier on. The 58 is now clawing his way back up into the top 15, and the first hurdle in his way in his conquest to a top 15 is at 96 right up in front. Casey Miles now having a look to defend here from the 58. What are his chances heading into the Sheen curve? Down towards Sterling's we go. You can see pressed right up to the back of him here. He is not leaving him any quarter for decision making. And neither too is that of the 616 of Andrew Veldkamp, must I add as well. Looking further up the order very briefly here, we see Simard and Bourne now having swapped places. Clinton Bourne having dropped now to the back of the top 5. Started in 3rd. Has dropped 2 positions since. It has not been the best of starts, admittedly. Could be a lot worse. Anthony Corti looking to pressure Daniel Poulon for 11th place. From behind him we can see George Todd. So two of the previous fighters, I should say, in the Battle of the Blues. Of course, we have yet without Vincent Simard. He's up in 4th place. We see Richard Cecil caught up in trouble there, and so too was caught up in some trouble was the number 6 of Clinton Bourne. Both of them in trouble between turns 3 and 4. Also in trouble, seemingly, there appears to be David Tanguay, now down to 13th. The one incident we weren't able to capture, but you can see a lot of its casualties right here and now. Among them is Richard Cecil, David Tanguay, and Clinton Bourne, all in trouble. The only driver not really seeing any problem with this right now is Byron Forrest, who's looking to within a chance here. 6.1 seconds to Carl Martel, but the chances are still very rich and lively for him to be in the top 5 after all things said and done. But a very controversial turn there. There's an incident evidently down between turns 3 and 4. We're watching here with Anthony Cotti now hunting down Daniel Junior Poulin. HCR Anthony joining us in chat saying, missed race 1 and qualifying. I think you may have missed one of the most bizarre starts I think I've ever seen, Anthony. I really do hope you take a look back through the race 1 VOD, because I don't think I've ever seen anything of that caliber before. Down through Paddock Hill Bend. I wish I had the replay on hand, but sadly now it's been archived, so we'll have to bring it up later. Oh my goodness, up the inside goes Carl David Bourdreau, wing and a prayer perhaps to put himself up the road from George Todd. You can see clearly is not happy after that move. That was a little bit dangerous. I'm not so sure about that one. Heading down into Druids. Get a look at that. That was, oh, that was a bit brazen. That was a bit brazen from the 962. Not 100% sure that was on, and you could definitely see it reflected there in the frustrations of George Todd in the number 12. Of course, this is his second race in the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series by Competizione Performance League, and he is furious at this time. Looking further up the road for a much closer fight as we try to reacclimatise to the desync there. We can see it now just immediately snap back into life. It's Anthony Cotti v Daniel Poulin. So, to recount how things went, it was Labé from Badiali from Bourne in the qualifying session for race 1, and then it was a huge incident that took well over half the grid with it. Ultimately, Byron Forrest surfed the madness through to lead by a landslide and won his first ever Jaguar race and his first ever, I believe, on record here for at least what we've been able to cover. This has been something he's been gunning for since the GT4 series a few months back. This is his first ever championship win outright. I will have to, of course, double check that in the future as well against other series that he's competed in here on the Competizione Performance League. Meanwhile, we see up the inside there goes Anthony Cotti after Daniel Poulin runs very wide out through Druids. But the bottom line as well, if we would just take it on the introspective level, that was his first ever Jaguar win, and in very satisfying fashion for Forrest. Right now, he finds himself up in 6th place after a very bizarre ensemble of incidents involving quite a few drivers, most recently the number 5, the number 6 and the number 30, David Tanguay, Richard Cecil and Clinton Bourne. We see a nearby fight going on here. Carl Martel is up the road from Vincent Simard. We see here very close fighting going on just outside of that top 10 as well, albeit both of them are still adamantly chasing Carl David Bourdreau. So let's see if we can catch on board with those three as we quickly take a peek here. Actually, no, this is the fight, so we don't have to take a peek anyplace else. We see intercepting George Todd is Carl David Bourdreau up the order. From behind him, Julio Bahena and Timo de Tosto all have their hands full with their own little slice of this very large battle at play. See Bahena trying to intercept Bourdreau. Right behind him is Timo de Tosto. Make no mistake, it's one slip and the crowd descends upon you here in Brands Hatch. In through Graham Hill Bend. As we get down towards that halfway mark, this is where the race is currently concerned with. Christian Labé leads from Badiali, Kevin Quain 3rd, with Carl Martel in 4th, Vincent Simard in 5th, Byron Forrest in 6th, Anthony Cotti in 7th, Daniel Junior Poulin in 8th, George Todd in 9th, Carl David Bourdreau in 10th, just up the road from the driver we're watching with here in 11th place, Julio Bahena. Right behind him is Timo de Tosto in the 58, Christophe Dupois in 13th, Casey Miles up to 14th, Alex Albert in 15th, Andrew Velkamp in 16th, Stephen Black in 17th, David Tanguay down to 18th, Richard Cecil down to 19th, and Carl David Bourdreau down, not Carl David Bourdreau, sorry, he's up in 10th, he's up in 10th, no mistake of that, Clinton Bourne down in 20th. Oh, you can tell that it's really getting to us here, the broadcast, at this late hour of the evening. Oh my goodness, trouble there for Julio Bahena. Also at the back of the road, one of the new drivers, Martin de la Chevrotière, which we see at the outside, I should say, now holds the apex, parks the bus, as it were, for Timo de Tosto to claim 11th off of Julio Bahena. Like I said, it's one slip and they descend upon you. We do see trouble, though. It was for Daniel Poulin, now back into the pit lane, or seemingly in trouble just before the pit lane. Oh, no, this is absolutely disastrous for him. Not a current indication as to what's happened to him there. We only saw a few accounts of where the 44 was. We now see from the 44's point of view, serious nose cone damage before the halfway mark. If he comes into the pits, it's not going to make much a grand difference on where he stands overall, with no mandatory pit stops in this race. See here, very close fighting for 13th place. Casey Miles versus Alex Albert. Heading up through Hawthorns. Right behind them as well. This makes a 3-car fight right now towards the back of the top 15. Andrew Veldkamp in that blue and yellow, number 616. Three very distinctive paint jobs. I will go as far to say that this is a very visually appealing fight, no less. Real treat for the eyes and ears. Symphony on 8 cylinders. As trying around the outside, it was ambitious there for all, but ultimately succumbs to position over Veldkamp, who now takes the helm of this fight for 13th place. Casey Mouse still defending in place in 13th. 16.5 minutes left to go here in race 2. I must say, against the bedlam that came from race 1, this has been a much more civil affair. Down through Paddock Hill in towards Druids we go. Trying for around the outside. The 616 for a late apex, perhaps. No, runs into the marbles there, drags himself into the far left-hand side before we get down towards Graham Hill. Trouble for the 707. Yellow flags out in sector 1. That's for Stephen Black, who's run off of track in through turn 1. You also see up the inside there, Alex Albert trying to give it there. Elbows out to the 616 of Veldkamp. It looked like contact, though, between the pair as they make their way out through Sterling's. Surtees, I should say. Sterling's is about 4 corners from here. 3. Actually, no. Yes, 3. In through Hawthorns, then. Derek Minter straight, more trouble for Albert as he catches quite a bit of grass into the wall. Goes the 36. Oh, that has gone horribly, horribly wrong for him there. We can see where it started. That catch on the grass out through Hawthorns ultimately has spelt doom for Alex Albert. There, that's where it all started. And there, swings into the wall. Not the worst impacts in the world, but that is going to be doing some damage to him over the course of this race. Still watching here with Casey Miles, Andrew Veldkamp in pursuit. We're going to quickly take a look around to see what the state of affairs is for Carl David Bourdreau, and he is still fighting a war on multiple fronts. Timo de Tosto and Julio Bahena tracking him for 9th place. Looking back in very quickly here with Miles v Veldkamp. So in terms of overall scope, that was Byron Forrest's 3rd Competizione Performance League win. He won in the GT3 single races in 2 and 9. But this is still, and I was correct in my assertion, this is his first CPL championship race. So that was quite something, and I think this is what a lot of the drivers do gun for. It's what keeps drawing them in, this magnetic force to compete in something long-standing, something near permanent, like a championship format. And that was his first. Now, we've seen a few drivers take individual wins before. In fact, I believe we've also covered a few, if not one, single race before we took it under our wing for the championships over, for example, GT4 Pro-Am Cup America, and now the Jaguar GT3 Revival. But that was, de facto, Byron Forrest's first championship, but his 3rd overall against 2 single race wins there, as information provided by HCR Anthony. Speaking of, actually, as well, speaking of HCR and more namely HCCL, we do have some fun and exciting stuff coming up over the sort of Christmas period with the folks over at HCCL. We see here up the inside, though, goes Andrew Veldkamp over Casey Miles. This is for 13th place. The 96 versus the 616, and now having surfed 1 car, surfs 2 into his fight of 13th place. Very well done for Andrew Veldkamp. He's played his cards close to his chest there. He's bided his time, and he has now been rewarded for it. But don't get too cocky in through Druids. That can catch you out. And Casey Miles already starts to regain some of that lost time. So yeah, looking into where things will be, actually just a moment here, as we do have yellow flags out for the 607s. That's Kevin Quain in trouble, and he had a pretty grand start, all things considered. Now drops out of the top 5. Martel up to 3rd, Simard up to 4th, Forest into the top 5. So Byron Forrest's dream to see the top 5 once again after a bit of a down-and-out one-shot qualifier after his first ever championship win here in the Competizione Performance League has now come true. For Kevin Quain, though, it is definitely going to be a result to forget, as he stood upon the chances there of a podium. Now stands in 6th place past the halfway mark. George Todd closely intercepting Anthony Cotti. 2 of the 3 in that act of the Battle of the Blues from race 1. Vincent Simard plenty up the road, though, up to 4th place at this time. So talking into what we've got coming up in the next sort of couple of months, I'd say, yeah, the suggestion there from HCR Anthony was Forest driver of the event, races, weekend. I'd say at this point you're looking at an overall driver of the day, just across both races there for Byron Forrest. It is above and beyond. If he can finish in that top 5 right now, this is the 824, the man in question, Byron Forrest. I believe might actually be Byron Forrest the second, as according to his name placard. We will have to get that updated. We'll have to ask him. I think we will have to ask him about that one. But Byron Forrest has been a phenomenal presence in the opening of the British races here in this sort of British leg of the championship. After 4 races in North America, we make the trip across the Atlantic, where Byron Forrest has really come into his own in that 824. A win on his first ever British race in this championship, and now is back into the top 5 after a down-and-out qualifying. So he has really played against both strengths and weaknesses in this new structure, in this new set of regulations for the double stint races, and he has really, really blossomed. So I would say it's within a very, very high presence for driver of the event, as it were. Driver of the round for round 5 is Byron Forrest, without a shadow of doubt in my mind. There have been plenty of drivers to have phenomenal races right now. I think we are seeing quite a few of them. Carl Martel has definitely surfed his way up through quite a bit here to be on the podium. I would say driver of the race, I suppose for race 2, you'd definitely be looking in the direction of drivers like him. I would also say as well for Forrest, you'd be not far off the suggestion of putting him in driver of the race as well, simply based off the fact that he has worked quite hard against relatively what would be the word, relatively overwhelming odds, especially out of that qualifying, to put himself where he is right now. Right now, he's second in the championship, and that gap, it is going to be closing quite a bit here. Admittedly, with LeBay still leading the charge with the fastest lap, he is going to mitigate some of that damage. But Forrest being already in a solid point-scoring position, what started in today's flurry of races as an 18-point gap, it is definitely set to close in quite a bit here before we get to Donington Park next week. So, finally, to get onto the discussion of fun things on the horizon here in both Competizione Performance League and also over on a few other series as well. What we do know right now is we've got some very exciting news for some of the drivers on the grid, very popular drivers on the grid in the NLRL Sunday League, which we've got exciting news coming up for this Sunday. We're not at liberty to talk about it just yet, but it's going to be a very, very fun time to talk about that one. We've also got, with HCCL, we've got the Carousel Cup coming up in the next 2 months. So towards the end of November into December time, you'll be seeing us with them. We've also got, I believe, a charity race in the middle of December. I want to say December 19th. I'll have to double check that on my calendar. But we are going to be working with them with the 2.4 hours of, I believe it's Spa for charity. I believe that's for St. Jude's Hospital. I do thoroughly look forward to that. It will be our first charity event since I think it was the XSC 9 Hours of Watkins Glen, which we co-collaborated with them on when we were a smaller commentary team. And that was quite a fun race, to be fair, as well. 9 hours, we took it in turns. It was a great time. Looking forward to this next one. We also got the HCCL Multi-Class Championship Season 3, which I'm told are potentially being offered up to us at this time. We'll be set to possibly cover that in 2026. As for Competizione Performance League, I'm pretty sure after this one we're heading back to Season 2 of the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. Do thoroughly look forward to being back behind the sort of commanding seat of the commentary box for the GT4s. Once again, they've been an absolute riot through Season 1, and the Jaguars right now have been a really solid act following from them to come back to the GT. Oh, goodness. Contact there between the 919 and the number 12. But they've resolved that themselves, so no need for the stewards to get involved just yet. We see here down the line, Albert has finally caught up to Mals. A lot of fun things, though, bottom line, is coming along the way. And in some of the other leagues we cover as well, we're hoping to potentially be covering some stuff in regards to Project Motor Racing. Now, we've had some discussions with the folks over at MSC. We've been doing some ACC content for them. We want to start focusing towards Project Motor Racing in the coming future. That is going to be quite an exciting time for when that arrives, because pretty much every time we hear about it now, that car list is getting better and better. We've just heard as well that Japanese GT500s will be joining Project Motor Racing. V8 supercars, specifically the Gen 2s, will be coming to Project Motor Racing. I think every single time we are given some tidbit of news about the game, it gets better and better and better. I think it right now just needs to nail the handling, and we're golden. We could be looking at a real second renaissance for GT racing, for sim racing on console, I would definitely say as well. Yeah, the GT4 car list, it's fantastic, and I'm sure it's going to be able to sweeten the deal for a lot of people. Just one moment, though. We do have yellow flags, and it's for Stephen Black in trouble, but fortunately, right in front of the pit lane, so I imagine that's the on-track equivalent of being hit by an ambulance. At least the emergency medical services are right at your doorstep, then. See here, George Todd still chasing down Anthony Corti, one of the closest fights on track right now. Second closest, Albert v. Mals. We'll stay on board with these two, though, as we continue our discussion. Yeah, to talk about that GT4 car list, though, for the Project Motor Racing car list, to see that it's definitely going to sweeten the deal for a lot of drivers who are on the fence about it. I know for a fact that the Chevrolet Camaro, the 6th Gen 1, which we saw Christian LeBay use to dominate that GT4 field back in Season 1, will be now featuring. It was previously not, but now we've got confirmation that it will. So now we actually have a proper heel to that 7th Gen Mustang GT4 also set to appear in the game. So that's just going to be, it's going to be brilliant. I pray, fingers crossed, touch on wood, cross your heart, whatever you need to do. It just needs to handle at least somewhat like this. And I'm sure that is more than enough for at least 60 to 70% of people. We also saw as well, yeah, that was a real oddball. The Nissan Z, the Nissan Z, the 400Z, whatever you want to call it, the new gen Fairlady. Oh, more contact again, just as we continue to watch with these two. The Battle of the Blues has left them black and blue as they have battered each other yet again. Contact between Todd and Coty. They've resolved it again, so again, a bit of a bizarre one. I think we saw where that kind of happened. He started to drift from the far left of the track, but he's just taking the racing line. Oh, that's not, I don't think the cameras are the most revealing on that one. See here, though, we'll try and get a repeat on that. These two have now since resolved it themselves. We literally saw there at the end of that clip. Yeah, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I highly doubt he's going to be in the good books of the stewards by the end of today's race. Byron Forrest right now looks to be within a chance of 4th place as he's 9/10 of a second away from Carl Martel. So let's see if we can go and catch on board with these two. Now on board with Byron Forrest in the progressing fight of 4th place. Whilst we wait for that to pick back up on it, the recent additions for that GT4 field, I mean, first, right off the bat, you had the GR Supra, which I think a lot of people have wanted in ACC for a long, long time. The Mustang as well, they wanted that in ACC for some time. No, we have more yellow flags out. This is down to the Dingledale for the 962. That's Carl David Bourdreau, I believe, in trouble. I have to try and catch on board with him here. We just quickly see these two back down towards turn 1. Now, it was a bit sketchy the last time around, and it seems this time around the number 12 has learnt his lesson. We do see, though, that that green flag has now since cleared. So back on board with these two. The GR Supra, of course, a very highly requested option. Same with the Mustang. Now that the Camaro's in there as well, you've also got the newer generation Alpine A110, so you've got slight improvements to the A110 platform. I am just seeing there on our radar another yellow flag in this middle sector. This time for the 707 again. It's Stephen Black with more trouble as we go running headstrong here into a yellow flag. You can see that the 707 on the left-hand side. They're back into green flags as they exit Sterling's with 3 minutes left to go. Functionally, 2 more laps. A little bit of gravel kicked in their face there. That was from the car just up the road on the podium there. 3.2 seconds away, not too far out. One slip could put Vincent Simard in closing distance to Byron Forrest. Already he has gone well above and beyond to put himself as driver of the round across both of these races. It would be remiss to not consider him as that part. It has just been absolutely show-stopping, but let's not ignore what is right in front of us here. Carl Martel has had a fantastic race as well. And really, it comes to be a case, how do these two choose to settle the feud down through Surtees? Through the Sheen curve. One thing that I think has not been particularly all that discussed in the general hype surrounding Project Motor Racing has been a lot of people have been talking about the LMDHs, a lot of people have been talking about GT3s, GT4s. Of course, those are going to be the most popular categories. Let's not act like it's not. But for me, what really caught my eye was the older NGTs and the GTs from the sort of earlier days of the sort of American Le Mans series and sort of early days IMSA content, and that really did strike a chord with me because you've got the older American style GT1s, but they're not necessarily the sleek body GT1s we got in the World Endurance Championship or at the 24 Hours of Le Mans for that matter. Is more the Lamborghini Murcielago, more the Aston Martin DBR9, the Salient S7R. I mean, you've got quite the ensemble of cars in there. I mean, just springing one to mind, the Lister Storm is on that list as well. I mean, it is going to be a very exciting time to see what the community does with that, because I think there's a great passion for different types of racing. And I feel like you see it here with these Jaguars, actually. You do get to see this very unorthodox approach to GT3 racing, because it is, yes, single make, but this is a very bizarre car in its own respect. So it does pave the way for a very unique style of GT3 racing. It almost gets a little bit on the nose to, I would say, something maybe almost touring cars-esque at times. I think we've definitely seen it here in Brands Hatch. Where better than to demonstrate that point here than at one of the premier venues of the British Touring Car Championship. Also get something vaguely supercars-esque about them. I think that's mostly the association with the V8 engine. Yeah, the GTO class as well. That's looking fantastic. We do have more yellow flags again in the Dingledale. It's been a real area of contention, and it has so far brought the 50 into the pit lane. That's Martin de la Chevrotier right at the very end of race 2 has brought it into the pit lane, potentially to be a DNF here on the final lap. We're going to try and catch on board though with the 119 of Christian Lebay. It is redemption day here in race 2 for Lebay, where he was struck down in his run through turn 1. Behind the 998, he has now triumphed over Giovanni Badiali in this race, led by a landslide here. Double figures between the 119 and the 998. Is looking to make up for a little bit of lost time here. A 2-race-long win drought for the 119. The defending GT4 champion brings his title forth into the Jaguar races as down across the line goes Christian Lebay to take the checkered flag here in race 2. He wins here in Brands Hatch. It's redemption for the 119. Yet another win on the chart there. That's win number 4 this season for Christian Lebay. That's 4 wins alone in one season. Back onto the winning charts there, joining the likes of what has now been, in the last 2 weeks, 2 new names on the list. Giovanni Badiali last week in Laguna Seca, and now Byron Forrest in the last race just gone of 2 today. Giovanni Badiali on the podium. Vincent Simard on the podium as well. What a drive there by Simard. The 120 really reveling in the moment there. Missed out on a podium in race 1. Not this time around for Vincent Simard. That has got to be probably one of the most gratifying feelings for him, especially with how things went so south in the very trailing moments of race 1. That is proper redemption as well for Vincent Simard. His first podium then in the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. Carl Martel in 4th, Byron Forrest. Easy discussion there for driver of the event, where he couldn't catch Martel. He has done more than enough against the odds. Not only has he picked up his first race win of the season, he has now also picked up his first ever championship win in Competizione Performance League, not including the single races, and he has done 2 back-to-back top 5s, one of which against the odds in a one-shot qualifying ballast, or success ballast, I should say. We'll get the full results in just a moment's time, though. Your bottom line, though, Christian Lebay, the winner in race 2. So your 2 race winners here in Brands Hatch, Byron Forrest and Christian Lebay. Win number 4 for Lebay this season, win number 1 for Forrest. All results to show in just a moment's time. I believe we're waiting here for confirmation out of shows here for Carl David Bourdreau in the 962. Get that full result up as and when it can arrive. Badiali onto the podium once again. He was down and out in that last race, so returning back to the podium, getting it done the second time around here in Brands Hatch. A mixed bag then for the 119 and the 998 here in Brands Hatch. A flurry of emotions out of race 1, and it's all come full circle in race 2. We'll wait to see the result, though, just so that we can get a full result of things, as we have seen quite a few drivers already drop away. So there's your full result. Christian Lebay wins in race 2 of round 5. Giovanni Badiali in 2nd. Vincent Simard onto the podium in 3rd. Carl Martel in 4th. Byron Forrest in 5th. Kevin Quain in 6th. Timo Tosto in 7th. Anthony Cotti in 8th. George Todd in 9th. Andrew Velkamp in 10th. Julio Bahena in 11th. Carl David Bourdreau in 12th. Christophe Dupois in 13th, Alex Albert 14th, Casey Miles 15th, David Tanguay 16th, Daniel Poulin in 17th, Richard Cecil 18th, Clinton Bourne 19th, Stephen Black in 20th. You can see there Martin de la Chevrotier in 21st. Your 2 race winners out of round 5 and the first of our double sprint races this season. Byron Forrest in race 1, Christian Lebay in race 2. What a dual set of races we have got today then, folks, here in Brands Hatch. A real treat as we enter the British chapter here with round 5 now under our belt. We'll be heading next in about a week's time to Donington Park, another properly solid venue out of the MSV lineup here in the British leg of the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series. Another double sprint to follow for the next 3 rounds before we get to the triple sprint for its first ever appearance in the Competizione Performance League and its first ever appearance here on TRTN. At round 9 over on December 16th. For what a round it's been today. Very well done to both of our race winners and well done to all of our podium sitters as well. And that being, if memory does serve me correctly, Byron Forrest, Anthony Cotti and David Tanguay, now Christian Lebay, Giovanni Badiali and Vincent Simard, all of our podium sitters out of the first 2 races in the double sprint format for this season. Very well done to the rest of the drivers as well. That's all from us on TRTN. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care and good night.